Hello, everyone, and welcome to the final day of the American Cup. This is it. We have two amazing competitors, Hikaru Nakamura and Wesley. So these two have taken down all the other opposition, and frankly, they've taken down one another as well. Hikaru winning their first match, Wesley winning yesterday. This is a double elimination tournament, so that means now one of them is going to be crowned the winner. I'm Jon Ludwig Hammer. Together with me is Maria Emilianova. And Maria, what do we have in store for today?
Hello, everybody. So today, everything will be finished. Everything comes to an end. This huge battle that Wesley and Hikaru had throughout these days, giving us amazing games, amazing hard racing matches. And yesterday it all finished not as we expected, but that guaranteed us an extra day today. And I'm really happy to be here today with you, Jon Ludwig, and with you guys in the chat. Please hype for today. The guys are already playing, but we are on delay, so the games for us will start in 8 minutes. And today the games are going to be shorter. So today they are playing in the time control that is for the elimination bracket.
That's 25 minutes per player, an additional 10 seconds per move that's being made. So it's much more than the 10-minute games that Wesley managed to beat Hikaru in yesterday. But at the same time, it's much, much less than the classical games in which these two players have only made draws. So I'm not sure who to favor. I think my general impression is that the lower time on the clock, the more that actually helps Hikaru. And you might think that that theory kind of got destroyed yesterday, seeing as how Hikaru lost 2-0 in the 10-minute portion. But actually, I think Hikaru, given that he was pushing for a win in the first 10-minute game, Hikaru had the black pieces and he was posing some very serious problems to Wesley. I think the main reason Hikaru ended up losing that game is because he got so focused on trying to win that he kind of forgot the long-term danger the position held. Because Hikaru got such a nice situation that he started being ambitious with the black pieces, thinking that if I win here, I can decide everything in the white game afterwards. That is a theory, of course. Many different theories allowed, but now we start scratch, 0-0, and may the best player win.
Yeah, for sure. And of course, if you lose the first game, you are in a must-win situation in the next one, and you have nothing else but to go all in. So to blame him for losing 2-0 is unfair here, because of course, had he had the draw in the first one, the second game probably would have ended differently. But since he really had to push for a win in the second one, he just gave everything up, and it ended as it ended. But that's the format. So it's 2 games. If you win, you have to win in the 2-game match. If you don't, then it doesn't matter how many games you lost and what is the final score. So now everything starts from scratch, and Hikaru has a great chance. And I do agree that on the shorter time controls, he is clearly favoriting anybody in this tournament.
So we also want to mention that the final in the tournament going parallel to this one, in that other final, Irina Crush was able to take down the 13-year-old Alice Lee. So Irina and Alice are not playing today because that match was decided yesterday. And congratulations to Irina, keeping her #1 spot and showing the youngsters that we old people, our brains still work.
Just subscribed.
Yeah, for sure. And she did it on the tiebreak both times in the main bracket and then in the final two. But her classical play was not as smooth. Yeah, we were following quite closely the game yesterday, and you might want to check it out after this event today, because that was very instructive how you can, even being so experienced and 7 times US champion and now 2 times American Cup winner, you still might go for some seemingly interesting line, but quite risky. And in that situation, Irina definitely was beating herself up right after what she did, because she actually blundered a piece and lost the game quite unsoundly. But yeah, kudos to her to put herself together after this, to come on a tiebreak and win the match and the American Cup title.
Yeah, congratulations to Irina. But now we are going to find a winner between Hikaru Nakamura and Wesley So. Honestly, I'm not sure whether Hikaru will have the white pieces or the black pieces first. I think he has the white pieces, but frankly, I'm going to look a little bit extra at the video feed we're getting from St. Louis to double check and make sure. Maria, do you think it makes any difference whether you start with the white pieces or the black?
I think it doesn't really matter, but it might be a good change for Hikaru, because yesterday the second tiebreak he started with black pieces, and he indeed starts with white today. We see them on the video; they just shook hands, so it's possible the game will start slightly earlier, just like yesterday when they said, why don't we just start? Let's go." So yeah, both players at the board, and we see that Hikaru has a new shirt. What do you think about that?
I can't see it right now. I'm
it's
gonna have
a dark
to...
blue shirt.
It's a shirt the same color as the suit. Is that fashionable these days, Maria?
No,
I don't know fashion. I'm no Oliveresa. I am no.
No, I wasn't asking about the fashion. I'm sorry. No, what I meant is, of course, a lot of players are quite known for being superstitious. And Hikaru was wearing his famous shirt in which he became the Fisher Random World Champion. But I guess because the match ended with a loss yesterday, he decided to change. Do you usually do the same, or do you not care about such things?
Of course I change. Why would you tempt the wrath from the high atop the thing? I'm trying to reference the West Wing, but I'm not sure I made it. No, of course I change my shirt when I lose, but luckily in my tournaments I don't have to play Wesley So I don't lose. Well, I lose sometimes and then I change my shirt. But yeah, my point was I play much weaker tournaments. So it's tougher for Hikaru. Okay, we're getting ready to start. We're less than 1 minute away. Wesley's adjusting his pieces. Hikaru looks focused, shake hands, and Hikaru starts with the knight. Surprising start here from Hikaru. He's not used this first move so far in the tournament. Wesley moves the queen pawn 2 steps forward, and Hikaru moves his king's pawn 1 step forward. I actually am slightly familiar with this opening because Magnus Carlsen played it against me just a couple of weeks ago.
Oh, wow. Yeah, this is much more flexible. And I guess, again, Hikaru decided to just change everything today. Change the shirt, change the opening, maybe something else. But yeah, it's C4. Is that the same?
Yeah,
Were you
so
playing
far
with the black
the
pieces?
same Magnus played against me. So I played this pawn to e6 like Wesley, and Magnus moved his knight out. So Hikaru deviates from the way Magnus played against me. Hikaru goes for the early fianchetto, getting this bishop pointing down the board towards the center, but also towards the area where we are expecting the black king to castle.
Mm-hmm.
And it looks like he's going to get an advantage on the clock.
Yeah, it looks like Wesley is starting to think quite early. That is unusual and a very good sign. But yeah, I do like this fianchetto in this diagonal. So that is kind of a novelty. What do you know about this opening?
I know that white usually doesn't push the pawn 2 steps forward because you're planning to have your bishop pointing down, and then you don't want your pawn to block your bishop. But that's about the extent to which my knowledge is. Wow, we got a couple of quick moves here. Bishop out, getting ready to castle. Hikaru completes his fianchetto. That's what we call this placement of the bishop. Castles, knight out, pawn up, all make sense. Trade in the middle, and here a lot of people are taking back with the knight, but then we've seen some amazing games where white just goes for an all-out attack with all the pieces pointing down towards the black king. So Wesley, he decides to instead capture back with his pawn because now he has the option of pushing this pawn further forward to block this bishop's path. Hikaru prevents the pawn from moving forward, offering a trade of pawns, both players leaving the tension here, just developing their pieces. Hikaru right now focusing on getting his king to safety. And what to say about this position?
Well, what I can say from the database is that not only it follows a lot of games that Magnus has played, but also Wesley himself played it with white pieces quite a bit. So both, and Hikaru as well. Hikaru also played this before, I believe, in Leeds game against Le Quang Riem.
Okay, so one interesting thing to notice about the position is that black's pawn on d5, the con for Wesley with recapturing here in the center is that after the further developments, that pawn has been left isolated. There are no other black pawns to defend on d5. It's what we call an isolated queen's pawn. But it's actually so common that we have an abbreviation for it, an IQP.
Okay. And yeah, this pawn is currently attacked by 2 pieces, but I guess white won't be able to take it right away because, yeah, Wesley immediately plays bishop f6, pinning the knight on c3. So there are a lot of tactical motives where black is using the fact that the king is still in the center and the bishop on b2 is not defended. So he is recapturing back on c5, and now... Oh, there was a lot of trades. I missed everything. It was so fast.
Yeah, for the second time in the game, it was like it seemed pretty calm and that they were taking their time on the moves. And then suddenly we got a flurry of moves. So let's recap this. Bishop f6 points down towards the white bishop on b2, meaning that the knight cannot move. Hikaru keeps the knight protected with his rook. Wesley moves the queen out. The queen now points towards the king. The knight can still not move, but there's also a massive amount of pressure from the black pieces on this knight. Hikaru blocks the bishop's attack by placing one of his own knights in the way. At this point, Wesley prioritizes recapturing the pawn that he was down. Hikaru captures the black knight, which actually helps this isolated queen's pawn get a buddy to defend it. But now the problem is whether this new guy might be a problem with Hikaru's rook already pointing dangerously towards that c6 pawn. Hikaru then castled to get his king out of trouble. Wesley continued this massive pressure against the white knight. And on this occasion, Hikaru does not block with his knight because, well, that knight is no more. Instead, he's moving his queen to offer additional support.
Yeah, so now these 2 pawns potentially might become a weakness on c6 and d5, and Hikaru now has 2 pieces already pointing in that direction. And we see that Wesley is again thinking for a while. So this must be still
actually, Wesley made his move. So Wesley, having put all this pressure in towards the white knight, decided to capture the knight and go for lots of trades, because now when the queen is busy recapturing this black knight, the queen also leaves the defense of the a2 pawn. So Wesley just grabs this pawn and attacks the bishop. The bishop moves away, and then Wesley has to deal with the pressure towards the c6 pawn. Wesley right now up a pawn, but Hikaru has pressure against 2 of black's pawns.
That's actually quite interesting. Until the move bishop f3, the game followed exactly move to move, a game that Wesley himself played with white pieces against young Krzysztof Duda. And here, Wesley played rook c2. But,
Can you still hear me?
Yes. Something wrong with the board, I think.
Yeah, no, my computer just crashed. And somehow I can still hear you. It's a miracle.
Wow. Yeah, the board is gone, but we have the live board here. That's fine. So I maybe stop sharing the. Can you do anything?
I cannot do anything. It's a miracle I can hear you.
All right. I will share my screen then. Give me a second. All right. Can we use this? That's interesting that you are still with us. That's great. I mean, it's better than otherwise.
Can you see me as well?
Yes, we can see you. We can hear you.
That's wild. Maybe I should bring up the game on my cell phone.
All right. We see the board now. I'm not sure where is this from. Oh, now also. Should I remove mine then? Two boards. Now we have a lot of boards. Anyway, so I can see that the game that Wesley played against Jan Krzysztof, he played rook c2, and actually the game ended with him winning the game. So that's pretty interesting that Hikaru goes for a different move that is a novelty, bishop f3. But yeah, I guess this is all still preparation, and now Wesley is thinking for the first time he's out of the theory. And possible...
Yeah, I was just going to say Hikaru's problem is that he doesn't have too many pieces left on the queen side, on the left side of the board. So he really needs to try and hold on to that one pawn he has on the B file in order to create problems. Because if basically all the pieces except the ones on the king side are traded off, then even if Hikaru ends up being having an extra pawn, then he's probably still not going to be able to win, because normally you don't win 4 versus 3 pawns when everything is on the same side.
Oh yeah, that's true. Well, I guess the fact that Wesley is now in a think tank means that Hikaru did surprise him, and Hikaru, well, he has now quite a nice pressure there. He's still a pawn down, but I cannot see one of these pawns not to be taken quite soon. It has to fall either c6 or d5. Plus, the queen is so misplaced, and that's why rook c2, I guess, is also a threat now. Rook c2 and maybe following with rook a1.
In general, Wesley needs to kind of be a bit careful about his queen.
Rook a1 is actually a threat now with
Yeah.
winning.
So Wesley's queen needs an escape. And even though Hikaru then is up by a pawn, no, sorry, down a pawn, he is threatening one of Black's pawns, and he's threatening to trap the Black queen. So Wesley's choice here is very limited.
Yeah, so he can move the queen, but then he's losing this pawn for sure. The other option is to play rook b8 with a counterattack on the pawn on b3. And then this is not a threat since he can capture with the queen.
I mean, if I'm Wesley, I'm definitely going for the counterattack. Counterattack and the opportunity to get my queen out of trouble. Honestly, I'm surprised he's spending this much time thinking about it.
And then Hikaru probably won't try to hold on to this pawn. He probably would just take on c6, and then d5 is also is threatened.
Yeah, so but like we talked about, right? If Hikaru loses this b pawn, then his chances of winning the game are just very, very low. So I think Hikaru is going to be willing to do quite some attempts at keeping the b pawn if he can.
Yeah, so then rook b1.
Well, I was thinking rook b8, b4, but I guess the point is moot at this moment as Wesley moves his queen back, basically just allowing Hikaru to recapture the pawn he was down.
Yeah, but I guess Wesley also can go for another counter-attacking move, bishop a6, attacking the rook, and then defending the pawn with bishop b5. I think they just traded the pawns. Yeah, there was a lot of moves. We're waiting for the catch-up. Okay, yeah, I see the queen is on c6. Yeah, nothing is happening. Okay, I will try to find out.
So queen takes c6, queen takes c6, rook takes c6, and bishop e6 has been played.
So he did play rook b8 then?
No, he played queen a6.
Ah, okay. Queen a6 takes, and bishop e6.
So I think Wesley's plan was basically just you're threatening to trap my queen. I want to get my queen out of there. Let me try and escape this whole situation. I'm willing to give you back a pawn as long as I get the queens off the board. And part of what Wesley has managed to achieve by doing this is that now the white pawn on b3 is undefended, whereas previously it had defense from the pawn on a2. So Wesley thought it was so important to take one of the white pawns because that left the other pawn to be a permanent weakness.
And now Hikaru is playing rook d1. There. Rook d1 and d5 is again attacked.
Yeah, but Wesley just doesn't care because all Wesley wants right now is to make the draw. I think Wesley's going to go into one of these rook end games with 4 versus 3, and then he's just going to suffer. But frankly, I think Hikaru should be happy about that. If he can get one of these end games with a pawn up, but where your opponent has to play very precisely for a prolonged period of time, that's that could suit Hikaru very well, considering the match situation and his lack of better options.
Yeah, it's quite a big chance that the opponent might blunder. It's only 10 seconds increment, and in a long defensive struggle, one mistake can cost a game. So even if you don't win a game, you put a lot of pressure on your opponent, and it also will take a lot of energy from Wesley defending this.
And we'll see if Hikaru manages to win an extra pawn, or whether or whether Wesley manages to hold on to this isolated queen pawn in the center of the board. Right now, Wesley is first prioritizing taking out the white pawn on b3, and the way he's maneuvered his forces, he's going to be able to do that right now. And after Hikaru has captured the black pawn on a7, the question becomes, will Wesley be able to defend the pawn on d5 in the long run? And right now, I'm not sure that's the case. To me, it seems very likely Hikaru will manage to win a pawn here going into the endgame.
Yeah, black has two weaknesses while white has only one. So simple math tells me that white is better, even though the engine says otherwise. The engine says that it's draw. So I think rook f to c8. No,
f
sorry.
to b8.
He did take, and rook f to b8.
And now Hikaru needs to figure out how he's going to deal with Wesley's plan of trading rooks. To be entirely honest with you, Hikaru can't really avoid it. Rook b1 is coming next move, and there's nothing Hikaru can do about it. And in Wesley's, there is something Hikaru can do about it.
Yeah, he can do something. But that's a bit passive. Of course, black will be able to defend now. Not with that rook, but with this rook. I guess it will be rook 3 to b5.
Yeah. Well, Hikaru felt that his chance of winning this position very much relies on there being two rooks on the board to create trouble. So he decides right now, I need to prioritize avoiding rook trades. And then I'm going to go g4, king g2, king g3, and then I will start moving my rooks back into more attacking positions. Okay, I was wrong about g4, but I was right about pushing one of these pawns forward. Hikaru goes h4. I was not expecting that. This allows Wesley to set up one of these pawn formations, 3 pawns in a line defending each other. Unless Hikaru wants to keep pushing his pawn forward on the side of the board. Hikaru doesn't really want to do that, because when you're trying to win, you often try to avoid more pawns being traded. So Hikaru doesn't really want to continue forward with his side pawn.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, guys, we are not getting the moves always, so we have to look at the screen and read the video.
What are the last moves you have?
Now I'm getting them. King g3, king f6, and rook a6 played. So he's pinning this bishop, threatening to take on d5 again. But now rook to b6 is a move.
Well, rook b6, then Hikaru wins a pawn. So Wesley has to decide, do I want to trade rooks but lose a pawn? Or do I want to let Hikaru still have 2 rooks on the board? And Wesley seems to think, I will make the trade.
Yeah, they're trading the bishops, so then it's probably a theoretical draw.
Well, of course it's a theoretical draw, but with an extra pawn, white can try and push this for the win. Wesley is an amazing defensive player, so we're not really expecting him to mess this up. But great players have lost similar endgames in the past. Only a couple of days ago, Alice Lee lost a 3 versus 3 against Irina Krush. So strange things can happen. Hikaru has an extra pawn. There's some hope. Not a lot of hope, but there's some hope.
Yeah, there is a quite a hope, but of course, seeing how quickly Wesley is playing this, both of the players are blitzing this out. I don't think we can we can hope for any massive time scramble for Wesley and a blunder. But of course, anything can happen. So some hopes are here. So what would be the plan here for Black? How should they defend?
Black needs to sit still. And sitting still is a skill on its own. Because a chess player is often wants to do something. Like it feels better actively defending the position rather than just sitting back and waiting for your opponent to improve their pieces. But that is what Black should be doing here. Rook a3, rook b4, rook b3. Just keep the rook on the left side of the board, ready to give checks on white's king if the king does anything funky. But as far as I'm concerned, Hikaru is going to be able to trade this into an E and F versus F pawn endgame. That's still a draw, but there's potential to make mistakes. I actually lost this endgame myself once in a blitz game. So blitz, of course, somewhat more difficult, but it's possible to mess this up. The main problem, like you said, Maria, is that Wesley has so much time on the clock, 14 minutes, and he also gets an additional 10 seconds per move that's being made. So it feels like he has things under control, but of course Hikaru is going to try. Of course he's going to push. He's got nothing to lose.
Yeah, I was about to say that maybe White's idea is to push g4 and create an outside passer, but it feels like Wesley had the same feeling and he put his rook on h1, preventing this.
Yeah, good point. That rook placement from Wesley is designed to prevent the white g-pawn from moving further up the board in a favorable way. Right now, Hikaru can push the pawn forward, but after g4, pawn takes g4. Hikaru wants to take back with the king, and that's why Wesley is keeping his rook in the vicinity so that the king cannot be the piece to recapture.
And then if he recaptures with the pawn, the rook starts to check the king and try harassing these two pawns with the king not being able to defend both of them.
Yeah, precisely.
Yeah, so perfect placement for the rook here. But then there are no other ideas for Hikaru. He cannot progress. If he pushes e5, the king just blocks it or goes to e7, and the pawn cannot go further while the rook will keep chasing it. The king can never go here because then these two pawns are left alone and the rook will start attacking them. So yeah, this black rook is very, very annoyingly stopping any advances for the white.
Yeah. No, it seems like Wesley is making a draw here by being very, very clever with how he prevented Hikaru's plan rather than keeping his rook on the side, like I said, to try and give checks on the white king. Wesley found a more direct approach to avoid Hikaru's main plan.
And yeah, some people keep asking in the chat what happens if it's a draw. Then the other identical game, but with the reversed colors, will be played. So Hikaru will be playing with the black pieces. And again, 25 minutes plus 10 seconds. Also, we got an update that the games will start slightly earlier than the previous days. So there won't be such a big break anymore. So there will be 35 minutes break after the first game.
Wesley now changed the approach with his rook. Now Wesley is trying to make sure that the E pawn Hikaru pushed forward is unable to continue further up the board.
Yeah, e6 with the rook on a7 would be devastating if the rook cannot stop it, because the pin doesn't allow black to capture the pawn, and then it just continues going forward for the queen.
So Hikaru
now the idea
tries,
is rook e3, I guess.
Yeah, he tries to maneuver his rook over to stop what this black rook has been up to. The problem is the black rook will, in that case, find a different method of disrupting white's coordination. And right now, it seems as though, even though Hikaru did manage to win a pawn, Wesley's plan of just grabbing that side pawn in the opening was entirely justified. Wesley ended up losing a pawn, even though he was up a pawn for one or two moves. He ended up getting into a position down a pawn, but a position down a pawn which he knew that he could defend easily, because what Wesley managed was to make sure that all the remaining pawns ended up on one side of the board, on the king side, like we're seeing here. And Hikaru is not making any headway.
Exactly. Yeah, and that's a good question by Shogun. If we can push the G pawn now that the rook, I think Wesley played rook to C1. I'm not sure.
Rook E1 is the latest move on my
okay, so
screen.
It is Hikaru's move. But he did play rook a5 because he cannot play g4 unless he is ready to recapture with the pawn, because the king is currently defending e5. So I think now in this position, Hikaru is planning to play g4. And now probably the idea is to go with the rook as far as possible from the king and start checking from the side with rook b4.
Well, actually, I thought Hikaru's idea was to go e6. But he has a couple of different ideas in mind, I suspect.
But e6 when the rook is on e1, or?
Yeah, when the white rook is on a6.
On a6, okay.
Because so then if you take with a rook, you go into a pawn endgame where the white king can do something. If you take with a pawn, the white king will infiltrate on the black king. Unfortunately, if you push that pawn forward, Wesley didn't actually have to move anything. And I think that's what Hikaru realized, so he changed his plan. That's the advantage of being up a pawn here. Like, you can try many, many different plans, and you just, continue trying different things until your opponent is tired and makes a blunder. Or your opponent is just very good at chess and it ends up in a draw. Also an option.
I mean, they are both very good at chess, so it's very likely we will see a draw. Yeah, some moves were again delayed, but now we got a bunch. And now Wesley is keeping the king away from the third rank with the rook on a3, ready to also start giving checks. In case of rook e3, he can give a check on a2 and then return to a3. But he also brings the king to e7 to have a better blockade for the pawn e5.
Yeah, very sensible play from Wesley so far in this game. And with that black king making its way forward towards the white pawn in the center, I'm not sure Hikaru has any option but to actually make a pawn trade, pushing his pawn forward. Because if Hikaru doesn't do that, the black king will get a very nice position next to white's pawn. And then you're never making any progress, I think.
Yeah, if he will defend the pawn with a4, then it's nothing else left for white to fight for. But unfortunately, his king is stuck. He cannot, coming somewhere to d6, d7 and having your rook guarding you would be ideal. But then again, these two pawns will be left alone, and at least one of them will be lost. So he has no time to do anything. So ideally he would trade this, but recapturing with the pawn f would not also give him any progress here, because the rook immediately goes there and starts attacking h4, and he cannot progress.
I gotta give it to Wesley. He's defended this endgame very convincingly. Right now, he's taking some time to think, which frankly surprises me. If I
he
was
left
Wesley,
the board. He was not at the board. He just returned and drinking some coffee, I think.
Okay, yeah. Wesley may not be a streamer, but he's got some of those streamer Giga Chat tendencies, huh? Leaving the board while you're defending this endgame. He's like, I don't need to focus for this.
I still have 11 minutes. I can go walk around. Okay, rook a5 played. And now what will Hikaru do? If he pushes the pawn, he pushes f4. I guess he wants to play king f3, g4, and still hope to bring his king g5, h6.
Yeah. No, it makes sense from Hikaru's point of view. And now Wesley gets a decision. Wesley can trade pawns here. If Wesley goes f6, then pawns will be traded. But no, instead he moves his king up. Now Hikaru's getting ready to give checks from the side.
Yeah.
But what if this black king just continues? No.
You mean king e6?
Yeah.
I suppose rook b6 and rook f6 is an idea.
Yeah, but then
so
you leave your own king alone. So then I just give lots of checks. Okay, but Wesley didn't go for that plan. Instead, he's moving his rook so that he can give checks on the first rank as the white king tries to progress forward. Now, the reality of the situation is that Wesley has a really nice pawn formation here now, where all his pawns are defending each other. And Wesley can just keep his king next to the anchor pawn, the pawn that's kind of defending the rest of the guys. And there's absolutely nothing Hikaru can do to make any sort of progress, because every time Hikaru now moves his king up, Wesley will start checking on the first rank. And that king will never get any piece.
Yeah, I was thinking about f5 with the rook on f6, but then of course there are a lot of checks that the rook can do, or also attack the pawn on e5, but he pushes it immediately.
Yeah, good try from Hikaru. Now he's going after the h5 pawn. The problem being that now Hikaru loses his extra pawn.
But black doesn't have to take f5, right? If he takes f5, then yeah, rook h6 coming with taking on h5. But what if black just ignores it and starts checking? I suppose rook a5 does not work because of either e6 or f6 and then e6. That was the idea.
But both the solutions there, I think, were absolutely fine for black. But Wesley did choose your idea, Maria, of trying to give checks, trying to force the white king up to h6, claiming that the king on h6 will actually be very misplaced because it's blocking the white pawn trying to become a new queen. So something now like king f3, rook a3, king f4, rook a4, king g5, rook g4, king h6, and then you take on f5. Very clever, like 5 intermediate moves.
Yeah, and if he takes h5, we take g3, and then the king is trapped here forever. Yeah, and the black king is always in the square. If white rook will try to trade for the black rook, the black king is always in the square. Plus, white always needs to be careful of the pawn on f5, of course, and needs to recapture it.
This is a very instructive endgame, everyone. And it is possible to practice on chess.com. There are some like features where you can go into like, I forget what it's called, like trial position. And you can say, I want to try and play against the computer with 4 pawns versus 3. And I find those exercises to be pretty helpful because the best way of practicing these sorts of endgames is by actually making the moves yourself and try to understand how the computer can trick you and stuff like that.
Yeah, guys, you're right. I think it's called drills as well, but trials as well is a little
drills. Yeah, that's what it's called. Thank you. Okay, yeah, so we're trading a lot of stuff, but Hikaru's still up a pawn.
After taking, no, he's not now.
Well, he's gonna be.
H5. Yeah, this has all happened.
So the last move I have on my screen is rook takes f5.
Okay, so I might be delayed.
What's the latest move you have?
Just g takes f6, f5. The one.
So rook f6, rook takes g3, rook takes f5.
And then we take on h5.
So Hikaru manages to he's not up a pawn right now, but he is going to capture the pawn on h5. So Hikaru is still going to be up a pawn. But what Wesley accomplished over the last couple of moves is that he got a lot traded off, a lot of stuff traded. And that's going to ease his defensive tasks. I think Wesley can even be, oh no, he's got to avoid being too clever. I was thinking about the variation rook g6, king takes h5, king e6. But yeah, that would actually be a massive mistake. The only thing I saw is that black will be able to win back the pawn, but after rook g5, the rooks are traded, after which the white king gets off the side file, gives gives that highway for the pawn to go in and become a new queen. And then it doesn't matter whether you're equal on material. The white pawn is going to become a queen and the black pawn is not. So that would be a situation where Hikaru wins.
Oh, wait, is it actually on the board? King e6 is on the board. Rook f6 check, king e5, rook f7. Oh, now it's the theoretical draw, of course. They both know that.
Wesley managed to trade another pawn. And the result is a situation where Hikaru will be up a pawn on the side of the board. He will be able to capture that black h5 pawn. But there's no way of winning the game because the king is unable to help the pawn forward because the black rook will always kind of cut off the white king so that the king isn't able to help out. And now rook g8 from Wesley will settle this result.
Okay, so he took on h5 after king f6, I think, was played. And rook g8. Yeah.
Rook h7 from Hikaru, trying to make sure that the black rook doesn't get in position in front of the white pawn. But Wesley can now... I think Wesley can just move over with his rook, like rook e8, a8, rook g2. Yeah, also good move. Hikaru just If Hikaru moves his king forward, the black rook will give a check on the king. If Hikaru moves the rook will go back. And Hikaru offers the stalemate, just like Wesley offered the stalemate 2 days ago in that epic struggle. The game is over. The players are shaking hands, getting ready for the next one. It's a stalemate on the board. Chess humor intact for both parties. It's a draw in the first one, meaning that Hikaru now with the black pieces in the second one is under pressure. At this point, it's do or die. In case of a win for Hikaru in the next one, he's won the tournament. If Wesley wins the next one, he's won the tournament. And in case of a draw, we will decrease the time limits to make these players go again.
Yes, exactly. And as we said, finally, there is some improvement in the schedule planning in St. Louis. So there will be a 35-minute break, not the announced what was that? An hour, almost an hour, but much less. So we will see the continuation at what 45? Quarter to the next hour.
So we'll be back in about 30 minutes, everyone. And in the meantime, I'm gonna check on why my technical stuff keeps failing me and restart my computer. See you back in 25 minutes, people.
Yeah. See you soon.
We're back with the final day of the American Cup. This is the final between Hikaru Nakamura and Wesley. So we saw in the first game, Wesley successfully defended the black pieces and will now have an opportunity with the white pieces to take down this match. However, you should not discount Hikaru Nakamura with the black pieces. In their first match in this tournament, Hikaru managed to win twice with black. So anything is possible. In case of a draw, we move on to even quicker time controls. I'm Jon Ludwig Hammer, and I will be guiding you through this exciting game together with Maria Emilianova. And Maria, what is happening? Hikaru with the black pieces, should we be nervous?
I don't think so. I think Hikaru has regained his full control and self-esteem in the previous game. After yesterday, of course, he had to get back psychologically to the game, and he changed a lot of things. He is wearing new shirt today. He started the game with a different move. Knight f3 was played for the first time in the tournament so far by him. So maybe we will see something new with the black pieces. Of course, it depends what Wesley will play, but I have a good feeling about this game.
We saw briefly Hikaru in the background on our live camera feed from St. Louis Chess Club in St. Louis, surprisingly. Hikaru getting ready for the game, as is Wesley. These players have played each other so much this tournament. It started out in the winner's bracket. The final of the winner's bracket, Hikaru, after 2 draws in the classical game, after both players won 1 time each in the 10-minute tiebreaker, Hikaru decided the match in his favor by sweeping Wesley in the blitz in the 3 minutes. Then Wesley yesterday very impressively came back to beat Hikaru in the grand final part 1. And this is the grand final part 2. And today there is no what if, or new day, or if this happens, then we continue tomorrow. This is going to be decided during this evening, whether we like it or not.
Yeah, it all ends today. This is the last day. There are no other games to play the next days. Hikaru will be back to his usual streaming tomorrow, and he will be back with his new amazing event with a huge prize fund, overall over $45,000. And we will mention it later when we get a chance. But Wesley is returning to the board, and I see Hikaru is chatting to somebody on the side, maybe an arbiter, but he seems content. He just looked at us, Chad, he just looked at us. Did you see that? He just looked us in the eyes. He knows where we are cheering for him.
Both players ready at the board. This final is about to get started. Wesley now with the white pieces, the handshake, the clicking the clock to start it. Wesley also sweeping the board, making sure that no stray hairs are interrupting his gameplay. And we're off. Wesley just starting with the pawn to e4. Hikaru going for the Berlin defense. Hikaru trying to be solid here. As the moves come in faster than I can keep up. Okay, are we going to try to do a little replay to see all the moves that just came rushing in? It started out with the king pawn opening. Hikaru responded in the same way. Both players moving their knight forwards, first to protect, then first to attack, then to protect. The Berlin opening means that Hikaru counterattacks in the center. Castling from Wesley, moving the rook over, trying to benefit from this rook, pointing down towards the knight in the center, towards the pawn, and also towards the black king. One potential problem of this line for black is that the king is still not in safety while the rook is pointing down on it. But Hikaru blocks with his bishop. Hikaru also has an attack on white's bishop, while the white bishop is busy saving itself to avoid being captured. Hikaru makes the trade in the center, gets his king to safety, and then Wesley moves his knight up to try and capture this black bishop. And he's not allowed to do so. Hikaru moves his knight back so that when the white knight attacks the black bishop, the bishop counterattacks the white rook. The rook moves back, and Hikaru offers the trade of knights. The knights have been traded off the board. Wesley pushing his pawn up in the center. Both players have two bishops. All the knights have been traded off. The big difference in the position is that Wesley has a pawn here in the center, whereas Hikaru does not, and also doesn't have the ability to get one, seeing as how Hikaru's bishop is blocking the pawn from contributing in the same way as white's is.
Yeah, it's interesting. This opening is, of course, much less usual than the ones we saw earlier in the tournament, but it is not new for Hikaru. He has played it with white pieces quite a lot, but it was quite some time ago. I see that the games are all from 2014, namely against Levon, Anish, one more against Anish, but Wesley never played this, but he is playing really fast. They both are. So yeah, it's interesting that Wesley prepared this against Hikaru, knowing that he will know that. But I guess he came up with something to surprise Hikaru. And for example, knight takes f6 has not been played by Hikaru himself before. He always retreated his knight to e3. Instead, Wesley follows the game of Alexei Shirov against Vladimir Kramnik, where Alexei takes on f6, then plays d4, and here I think was b6 played, but I'm not sure if this also follows. Yeah, that also follows the game of Shirov Kramnik. So we're still in the theory.
The black bishop was unable to get into the game because of the black pawn on d7. This black pawn was unable to get into the game because of the black bishop on d6, and therefore pawn to b6 to find a different way for the bishop to get involved was very sensible by Hikaru. And if allowed, this bishop would like to go on the side of the board to attack down towards the white rook. Wesley prevents this when he moves his queen up. This queen taking control of the a6 square, making sure the bishop cannot go there. Instead, Hikaru moves this bishop just one step forward. Also, a sensible choice, pointing down to where the white king is holed up. Bishop d2 played by Wesley. Wesley's getting ready to get his other rook into the game.
Yeah, they are still playing pretty fast. And now Hikaru is thinking on his next move. So I'll just let you know that in this position, Kramnik played rook a to e8.
And that's what Hikaru just did.
All right.
And Wesley continues in the same way. Rook a to e1. Both players bringing their rooks from the corner into the middle.
Yeah, I'm not receiving the moves, unfortunately. Yeah,
Hikaru now has to make a decision. Both of white's rooks are pointed down towards the black rook. You have two options. You either trade the rooks or you do what Hikaru just did. Rook to e6. Very, very clever from Hikaru. He just moves his rook to where it's being protected by his pawns. Hikaru wants to, on the next move, to move his other rook to the center, pointing down on all of these white rooks and just make a bunch of trades. And if Wesley decides after rook e6 to go for the trades himself, well, then Hikaru can capture back with his f pawn. And it turns out without even moving, this rook got involved in the game, pointing down the same direction as the queen because of that trade between the rooks.
Yeah, and it's still very much in the prep because we saw how quickly Hikaru played rook e6, although he looked a little bit unhappy with the move, with having to play that move, but he definitely knows the theory, knows that game that I mentioned, Shirov Kramnik, and he's following it because judging by the time how quickly he made the move. And now Wesley is thinking. So in the game by Shirov, c3 was played, just putting some extra defense for the pawn on d4.
It doesn't feel like a very ambitious move.
No.
It doesn't feel like the kind of move that can put pressure on your opponent.
No, yeah, with the white pieces, especially if you want to take the most out of this time control, knowing that in Blitz everything starts over, and also remembering how it went the last time for Wesley, he probably will try to push as much as he can with the white pieces. And here are some other options. He can also push the same pawn, but one step further to c4. There are also options of b4, I guess, preventing any ideas like a5. Maybe replacing to b5 himself.
In general, just being aggressive with the pawns is the only way Wesley can make Hikaru's life difficult. So pawn to c4 followed by pawn to b4. This is the only way Wesley can create trouble. But then I would think after the trades in the center of the board, Wesley can't even take back with the queen trying to attack the black king, because then Hikaru has his queen looking at this undefended white pawn in the center. So
and there's no checkmate.
Yeah, even the aggressive plans of pushing the pawns forward is not really working out for Wesley, is my opinion. And therefore, I think Hikaru is completely fine. I think this match is going to go from the 25-minute rapid games to the 10-minute rapid game tiebreakers. It is so difficult to gain the upper hand when these two players are competing. They're so difficult to beat, both of them. They've proven it throughout this tournament. And right now, the way Hikaru has developed his pieces, even if somewhat unorthodox, like in general, I want to say to everyone watching, don't put your bishop in front of your central pawn. That is normally not okay at all. But Hikaru, he's allowed to do it because he knows the exceptions to the common rules. And here, the bishop contributes without the pawn actually needing to get involved.
Yeah, exactly. This is an exception, and this position looks extremely solid and yet quite dangerous for white if they indeed go white aggressively on the queen side, leaving the pawn on d4 and defended. I was thinking maybe he can go for a bit slower approach, but with the same idea. For example, b4, then defend it with a3, and then move his bishop from d2 to b2, and only then play c4. I mean, it's a lot of moves, but could this work?
Well, here's my thinking. Hikaru's plan is to just trade the rooks after he's got both of these rooks pointing down. And wow, yeah, I also caught I didn't catch Hikaru leaving his board, but I saw him getting back to the board, which is like the same psychological trickery that Wesley was doing in the previous game. But the point I was making is that after all of these trades, Hikaru will also offer a trade between the queens. And you kind of have to accept the trade between the queens because Hikaru would also be threatening checkmate in towards this white king. So I just think Hikaru's plan here is so easy. And there's no real way for Wesley to avoid all the scary pieces being traded off. So here's c4. We see Hikaru making this move, rook to e8. And Wesley plays bishop c3. That makes a lot of sense because we saw in an earlier variation that the bishop, the pawn in the center needed some extra protection. So sensible move by Wesley, but still, Hikaru's just going to trade off all those potentially dangerous rooks.
Well, maybe he doesn't have to do it immediately. It's not like Wesley can avoid that trade at all, but maybe it's better to keep this tension. Of course, Hikaru is gonna probably make a green and take on e2.
Yeah, no, actually, good point, Maria. I agree. It's better to first try and trade the queens. So I'm expecting Hikaru to go queen g6.
I think he's gonna take.
Trying to get the queen trade, and then he'll start taking.
He just reached out for the rook, I think, or maybe for the queen.
They're next to each other.
Yes, that's
well,
true.
The thing is, when a player at this level captures a piece, they will normally take first, touch the piece they're capturing, and then move their guy. So if Hikaru was going to capture, this is an interesting fun fact, people.
That's true.
If Hikaru was going to capture the white rook, he would be more likely to actually go for his hand and grab the rook and then move his rook, rather than picking up his rook and then having to do the magical exchange, which is also like a trick chess players do, where you hold your rook and then you kind of just I'm not sure what the right English verb is for it, but you knock out the white rook while picking it up in your hand, and it kind of rests here. And then I wish I had some pieces. I'm a chess player, but I don't have chess pieces at home. I wish I could demonstrate it to you.
Anyway, we trust you, Detective Sherlock Hammer. I'm sure we will see Queen G6 now on the board.
Turns out I was wrong. But he did move his queen in my defense.
It was a queen, yeah.
Queen f4. Hikaru goes for the checkmate threat. The queen and bishop together threatening checkmate on h2. Wesley immediately moving his pawn forward to prevent that. But then Hikaru moves forward with the queen to threaten another checkmate, forcing Wesley to take the black queen, allowing the black bishop to get in a very nice position, making threats in towards this white rook.
And after them to trade. Potentially. Yeah, I like how he created this tiny, maybe not so relevant, but it's still a weakness, and making more use of his bishops. Of course, both of them have a pair of bishops, but at the moment, black bishops look so much better with this diagonal being occupied by Hikaru. And Wesley probably will be trading this off, but that still means that Hikaru has an extra tempo. So it's a tiny bit win, but it is a win.
But Maria, there's actually a trick. If Hikaru now takes back with his rook, after bishop to h3, threatening the rook and threatening the pawn behind the rook, Hikaru will have to trade rooks, but then he has no way of defending the pawn on d7.
That is true, and he's now thinking what to take with.
So Hikaru, I feel like I saw it in his body language. He wanted to recapture with the rook, but then he saw this variation, which actually is very awkward for black, because like we were talking about, normally you don't put your bishop in front of your pawn, because then your pawn cannot move forward. And now we see the problem of the pawn not moving forward.
Yeah, but maybe it's not such a big problem, because we can also attack.
Well, it is a big problem because Hikaru chose not to capture with the rook. I think if Hikaru thought that was okay, he would have used his rook to capture whites, but instead he felt forced to capture with the pawn instead.
I was just thinking that I think our bishop is in time to capture pawn on a2 instead. But
the engine did say that it was an okay position for Hikaru, but it was based on some very tricky business with the bishop. Like Maria says, something about the bishop managing to maneuver its way.
White squares, but yeah, I guess instead of calculating all that and risking, it's much safer to just recapture with the pawn and avoid that.
Well, and also I don't think Hikaru saw the trickiness, because it's so much easier for the engine to find like 5 move only defensive plan ideas. But it's okay. It doesn't matter, because taking with a pawn like Hikaru did is completely fine for black. If anything, this pawn now has increased control of the center, of the pawns in the middle of the board. It's 2 versus 1 in black's favor, although that is a bit of a simplified way of saying it, because the white pawns are more aggressively placed. So they're definitely no slouches.
Yeah, they are more aggressively placed, but at the same time, they are also more vulnerably placed than on the starting positions. And I also like the semi-openness of the file F, which could be an advantage for Hikaru, since the pawn on e6 is well defended. He might try to do something on the F file and potentially open up the center and activate his dark squared bishop.
There's also a plan here I like with c6 and b5. Essentially, Hikaru is saying that this white bishop is not so good because it's being blocked by its own pawn. And so Hikaru could try to have the plan of moving his pawns over to the light squares and thereby kind of make the white pawns stuck on the dark squares. But just as I said that, Wesley addressed the problem. D5, good move by Wesley because he makes sure that he doesn't leave his bishop on a poor diagonal. Instead, he opens up for the bishop so that it has maximum power.
Yeah, that's a very, very good point. The strength of the players is not only on an ability to calculate ahead their moves and the responses, but also to be able to find the best idea for your opponent and to ask yourself, what is their plan, and to prevent it. And that's what Wesley is doing, preventing this idea with c6, b5 by playing d5 first.
On the other hand, this does provoke more trades. And the more trades, the more likely it's going to be a draw. So this move from Wesley decreased Hikaru's chances of winning this game, but it also increased the chances of the game ending in a draw.
Yeah, well, that also comes with downsides, of course. But you cannot avoid all the trades, especially with both bishops being on the board. And
Hikaru decides to move his bishop back here, offering extra defense to the pawn on e6. Now, the pawn in the middle could not be captured because that would have opened up between the rooks in the middle. And Hikaru didn't want to allow white to capture the black pawn, because if Hikaru did a nothing move, then Wesley would be able to make a trade, giving black an isolated pawn, a pawn that could not be protected by the other black pawns. And that's considered a rather significant weakness. And Hikaru instead moves his bishop in a position to protect the pawn, so that if now the trade happens, there will not be a weakening of the black pawn position, because the bishop is ready to take back.
Yeah, and although he's giving up the big diagonal by moving the bishop, he's also preventing the white bishop from going to h3, which would potentially create more problems for black because of this pinned pawn and all the pawns being on the light squares. The bishop on g2 instead would be not as powerful because it's not attacking anything.
But I gotta say, Maria, what if Wesley responds to this plan by just harassing the bishop? Pawn forward, bishop has to move, bishop back, pawn forward, attacking the bishop again, bishop has to move. And then if the trade happens, Hikaru gets that isolated pawn after all.
He does, but at the same time, the bishop, the white bishop cannot go to h3 anymore, attacking this pawn. And the pawns on h3 and g4 could be also attacked later, potentially with maybe h5, trading one and then having the other one as a weakness. So I think it's balancing out the situation here.
This is game 2 of the grand final of American Cup, part 2. These guys have played each other in 2 matches already in this tournament. They won 1 each. And since this is a double elimination tournament, it means today is the final day. The guy who loses today will have lost 2 matches. And so the person who wins today is the winner of this year's American Cup. The first game, when Hikaru had the white pieces, ended in a draw. Hikaru was up a pawn in an endgame, but Wesley defended very nicely to secure a draw regardless. And now with the black pieces, Hikaru has a 6-minute time advantage, in addition to having the computers in that the computers feel like this is a perfectly fine position for black.
No, of course, it's easy to judge when you look at the engine, and I must admit sometimes I do get a bit lazy and stop thinking. But here, I just feel like the pawn on e6 cannot be such a bad weakness because it's still quite close to the king. Had it been on e5, It would be a much bigger weakness because it immediately can be chased by f4, and if you push it forward, then it becomes a huge weakness with all the pieces, including the king, coming for it, and then I don't think we would be able to defend it.
So that's why Hikaru is not moving the pawn forward. Instead, Hikaru, by moving the rook up, the rook is now defended by the black bishop, meaning Hikaru is threatening to capture the white pawn. To avoid that from happening, Wesley is the one to initiate this trade. Hikaru takes back with his bishop, avoiding that isolated pawn situation we discussed earlier. King G2, Wesley trying to get his king in a better position, and Hikaru moving his bishop back, offering up the trade between the rooks. Hikaru has defended this black game very well. I don't see any problems for him whatsoever. I think this game is going to be a draw. And in that case, we are coming back with tie breaks. And the tie breaks are as follows. In case of a 1-1 tie in the 25-minute games, which is what we're doing right now, they will be playing some 10-minute games, 5 seconds extra added on per move being made. And if it's still 1-1 in the 10 minutes, they go to 3 minutes, where Hikaru completely destroyed Wesley in those tiebreakers previously in the tournament. And if they're still tied, they go to the dreaded Armageddon, where white gets an additional minute on the clock and the benefit of being the white pieces. But the catch is that in case of a draw, the black player is declared the winner of the tournament. So those are the rules we need to know. And right now, it seems to me this is going to be a long evening. We were kind of expecting it as well, seeing as how these two players have played each other a lot in this tournament, and they've been playing so well that we've seen it's nearly impossible to beat the other guy this game. No exception to that rule. I think it's going to be a draw. Both players now down to 2 bishops and 6 pawns each. There is a difference, though, Maria, with the pawns.
Yeah, the difference is that more pawns Hikaru has on the queen side, plus they are placed on the dark squares more, while the white pawns on the queen side are all placed on the light squares, which means that ideally we would want to get rid of the light squared bishop, but keep our bishop, which is probably quite hard to do. But yeah, that's why also Wesley is keeping his bishop on d3, preventing bishop g6, b1 ideas.
Yeah, we would love to manage to maneuver our bishop in behind those white pawns, but right now that's looking difficult to do. Wesley is making some progress here. One thing to note is the difference of the king positioning. Wesley has a slight king advantage here. It's much easier for Wesley to get his king into the center than it is for Hikaru. Part of the reason is because Hikaru's king is busy defending the pawn on h7. So if Hikaru tries to move his king over to get into the middle, then Wesley can capture the pawn on the side of the board. So still things to play for here. As Hikaru plays c6, clearly Hikaru is trying to play the move d5 and increase his influence in the middle of the board. But
yeah, there was a question if g6, but guys, because white has a pawn on f4, we are not in time to win that bishop. It's about the bishop h7 that you just mentioned. Maybe we can quickly show that. Yeah, so here if we play g6, unfortunately it does not work We would have loved to win that bishop, like even some grandmasters were losing. But f5 here makes white just in time to save the bishop.
The attack on the g6 pawn means that the pawn cannot stay where it is.
And if king g7, they just take on g6 with either pawn or bishop, and they save it. In fact, they have two extra pawns now on the king side, and probably would win the game.
So that means Hikaru still has to be careful using his king to defend the h7 pawn. Hikaru has been focusing instead on pushing his pawns forward in the center. Wesley here moving his king forward. I'm very surprised because I'm looking at the computer evaluations, and the computer is not recommending pawn to d5. But that was quite clearly Hikaru's idea when he played this c6 move. So I'm wondering what happens. Pawn to d5, captures, bishop takes. Why would this be a problem for Hikaru? I'm so surprised at the engine saying white it's better.
Yeah, I did see it on a better engine with the devs going from 20 to 30 moves. It suddenly started hating this, showing almost one pawn of an advantage. Why is that? It's really hard to tell.
And this is what Hikaru is thinking about right now. The reason Hikaru is thinking is because he's trying to evaluate what happens if he goes for this trade of the bishops. And if the computers are hating this for black, the deeper they're thinking, that is ominous. But it seems like the more Hikaru was thinking, the more he realized that this pawn push in the center is quite dangerous. And Hikaru makes the completely right decision to avoid it and instead play the move g6. Now, this g6 move also has the added benefit of giving some space for his king to get involved. And now there's no more concern about the pawn on h7, seeing as how the bishop's threats down there has been blocked by the other black pawn. Wesley, he pushes his pawns further up, but now the circumstances have changed. And now the engines are saying this is a good moment for Hikaru to push up in the center, recapture with his bishop. Why does it matter that the black pawn has moved forward one square and the white pawn has moved forward one square? I don't understand. What's the difference? Why would this be okay for black now, but not okay earlier? It's still a tricky endgame. And Wesley is benefiting from the fact that his king is higher up towards the middle of the board where the action is happening right now. So Hikaru is the one who has to be careful.
Yeah, I think Hikaru still needs to be careful with d5, although my understanding is that the fact that the pawns on the king side are extended after a potential trade on d5, which I'm assuming why white is happy with this because of creating an isolated pawn, black in return gets a counterplay attacking those pawns. And if white will be forced to push f5, then our king will start attacking the pawn on f5, which is not defending by the bishop anymore. And that's probably the difference between doing it immediately or not. But Hikaru goes for a different move for now. I'm sure d5 is going to be played eventually. He will just find a better moment for that. Instead, he plays a5. The idea is to attack the pawn chain in the center, right? To play a4. And offering that trade, which will destroy an entire pawn chain of Wesley.
Yeah, Hikaru is basically just trying to trade. So if Wesley now continues to move his king over, then Hikaru will push further forward. Now, this pawn on the side cannot be captured because, as Maria said, that would interrupt the defenses and it would allow this black bishop to capture the white pawn, giving black good chances to win the game because now you have all of these pawns that can rush forward in the center. And Wesley, he was having none of it. He said, no, you are not allowed to keep continuing forward on the side of the board. Wesley just put his pawn to block. And then Hikaru pushes forward in the center. Okay, now Hikaru has this isolated pawn, a pawn that cannot be defended by other pawns. But at the same time, he is pushing Wesley's bishop back. Wesley moves the bishop one step back. No, he's thinking.
Yeah, he's thinking, and now Hikaru's idea is that if bishop does not go to c2, then he will be attacking pawn on b3 whenever he pushes the pawn, and maybe not even immediately, but the threat is, as I say, stronger than execution. But of course, Hikaru in return also has to be careful about his pawn on b6, so it's quite double-edged.
Yeah, I mean, the white bishop would love to go into an attacking position pointing towards this black b6 pawn, very much the same way black's bishop would love to attack the pawn on b3.
Yeah, so probably bishop d4 immediately is the best way for
that's
Hikaru
a good
to prevent this.
Good move, just having the bishop back into the middle of the board. Is this what happened? We did have a couple of moves. Wesley actually moved his bishop all the way back, 2 steps back, so that the bishop is now helping out the defense of the b3 pawn. Hikaru went back with his bishop, going to put the bishop on this nice c5 square. Wesley then moving his bishop forward, having this bishop work together with the other bishop, pointing down the board. Hikaru moves his bishop to that c5 square, working very well together with this black pawn. The black pawn is protecting the black bishop. The black bishop is protecting the black pawn. Harmony in the army. And Wesley, he goes bishop e5 to try and infiltrate and somehow push his pawns further up the board.
Yeah,
you can see Hikaru here reaching for his king. He goes with his king to f8.
Yeah, now he can move the king. All the pawns on the king side are defended, and he probably wants to put it on e6, stopping. No, maybe not e6, that because then f5 comes with check. He could be thinking of going to c6 and pushing b5 eventually.
Well, I think he's just going to stay here in the middle on e7. Yeah. Just a little bit closer to the action. Wesley, on the other hand, is starting to try getting a new queen. Wow, and this is actually kind of dangerous. Hikaru doesn't want to let Wesley trade these 2 pawns, because if now Hikaru continues the plan of moving the king in towards the center, then Wesley can go for the trade, and suddenly Wesley is close to getting one of those outside passed pawns, one of those passed pawns on the side of the board, so that you get distracted over there, and then the opponent starts attacking on the opposite side thereafter. Hikaru decides to go for the trade.
Yeah. Now the question is, what will Wesley take with? Probably bishop to keep the pawns connected, and going for another passed pawn with h4, g5, and so on.
Definitely using the bishop here, Wesley, I think. But if you take with the bishop, will Hikaru then be able to push his pawn forward in the middle and open a counterattack?
Maybe that's what Wesley is concerned about, because b3 then is hanging, And white taking on h7.
Ooh, but this could get really spicy.
Yeah, that's what we want, right?
Yeah. Wow. I said earlier that this game was looking like it's a draw, but at this point, it's looking like anything but a draw. Both players trying to get a new queen. Oh, yeah. And if Hikaru just focuses on capturing pawns on the side of the board, the white bishops are actually perfectly placed to help this pawn move forward and become a new queen.
Yeah, that's too dangerous.
Okay, bishop takes f5 on the board, threatening the pawn on h7. We just analyzed what could happen if that pawn was not protected. So Hikaru makes the good decision here to keep that pawn safe for the time being. It would be very dangerous if Wesley was allowed to capture it. Wesley then attacks the black pawn with his bishop. Hikaru defends with his king. Wesley moves back. King moves back. Are we going for a repetition?
We will see. Okay, so h6, and what was played?
H6, bishop attacked the pawn on h6. The king went up to defend.
So it was once.
So now they've gone back and forth once, but that means the same position has happened twice. And the rules in chess are that if the same position happens 3 times during the game, the game is declared a draw because you're not making progress.
Yeah, I guess Wesley cannot find a progress yet. Well, other ideas for him would be to bring the king over to d3.
That could be an idea. Personally, I was thinking, h4. Let's push these pawns, trying to get a new queen. And that is what Wesley is doing. Wesley's going for the win. He wants to decide this American Cup right here and now. He's not interested in going to further tie breaks with lower time limits. He knows that Hikaru going into 10-minute games and especially going into 3-minute games, Hikaru is very, very, very good. So now Wesley is trying to decide this while he has the opportunity to do so. The white bishops are pointing very well together, trying to help out all of these squares that the white pawns need to get past in order to become new queens. So these bishops are optimally placed to help the pawns become queens. And now Hikaru starts the counterattack.
Wow. We are going to have some spicy game here. d4 on the board.
And Wesley's down 5.5 minutes on the clock. If Wesley keeps spending a lot of time here, he could have to make some very tricky decisions while he's low on time.
So probably bishop c2 is forced to defend the pawn.
You would think so. You would think so. So normally you would just go bishop back, defend pawn that's being threatened. But look at this move being suggested by the chess engines. Pawn to h5.
Wow.
The engine is suggesting that Wesley just completely ignore the threat to the pawn on b3, because if that pawn is captured, then Wesley continues forward with another pawn, sacrificing this pawn to give a clear path. Wow. And look at this pawn being helped by the bishops. That pawn is going straight in to become a new queen. And this is what Wesley has done. Wesley has played pawn to h5. Wesley's saying to Hikaru, go ahead, please capture my pawn here over on that queen side. I don't really care. All I care about is trying to get a new queen on the opposite flank.
Wow. Yeah, so you cannot take on b3. Then what do we do? Bishop e7 to prevent g5? Hikaru looks puzzled.
Bishop e7 to prevent this? Well, then we leave the protection of the d4 pawn. Then we lose this. Oh, yeah,
and then we
are threatening. Yeah, we are threatening this pawn. I forgot about that for a moment.
But that might be the only way to stop the g5 threat.
Wow. I mean, if we cannot capture this pawn on b3, then why did we even push this pawn forward in the center? Because one of the problems with pushing the pawn forward is that now white's king has an opportunity to push into the center of the board and maybe even try to come in behind.
No, wait, we don't have to play bishop e7 because now g5 comes with bishop takes h5 check. We just don't take on b3.
But if we don't take on b3, aren't we going to lose then in the long run as the white king approaches this pawn on d4?
I guess. Well, then we can take on b. What
it's
do we do then?
It's a tricky situation.
This
Wesley
is very
leaves
tricky. This is almost Zugzwang, but we only have the king.
Wesley leaves the board at this critical stage. Hikaru shaking his head. The good thing here is that Hikaru had a big time advantage. Now he's going to have to use that time to figure out how to save himself.
Yeah, this is very tricky. So maybe we could play king g8.
Well, I just don't understand what king g8 does.
It leaves the square for the bishop to come to f8 instead in case of g5. And then maybe we can just survive, and then the pawn, of course, will be attacked.
King moves back.
Then we can maybe take. And if g5, bishop f8.
Oh, yeah, we don't take this pawn because then white's pawn makes it through. But instead, we open up. I guess you said this. I just didn't understand how the ideas work together. We move the bishop back to protect. I mean, I'm still kind of nervous because now we allow this.
It is very nervous. I think h5, he missed this move. I think Hikaru did not realize how dangerous is h5.
Yeah, and look at this variation. If now Hikaru takes the pawn on the side of the board, it's actually checkmate. These two white bishops working together in towards this area in the corner is just so problematic. It's creating so many tricky situations for Hikaru to have to deal with.
Yeah, he has to keep the bishop on this diagonal so to protect the king from checks, because even if it's not a checkmate, with the pawn being advanced to g6, he cannot leave that square because the king is guarding the promotion square from the pawn. But at least this keeps the game equal. He's still thinking, though. He's still... Well, this is a critical moment in this endgame for sure.
Hikaru does go king g8. But that's the kind of move, like, as a top player, you really don't want to be moving your king away from the middle of the board, especially when your opponent has their king just smack dab in the center. Hikaru did find one of the best moves in the position, but he's playing it with a heavy heart. Because right now, he knows he's in trouble. He knows he needs to continue defending with supreme accuracy. Okay, at least he managed to force Wesley into going back to defense. Bishop c2 from Wesley was necessary to keep the pawn on b3 defended. After that, d3 from Hikaru. Hikaru is trying to lure Wesley into capturing the black pawn so that Hikaru can capture the white pawn. Basically, Hikaru is saying that my pawn in the center is pretty worthless anyway because the white king is so close to capturing it. So I'd rather trade it off with a white pawn than allowing the white king to come over and capture.
Yeah, that's a Giga Chad move to get rid of this pawn and to trade more pawns. But Yeah, the moves are not coming in, really. The bishop is still there. He did not make a move yet. Yeah, Wesley is now at 6 minutes, while Hikaru at 9.
So Wesley does have the opportunity to avoid capturing the pawn, saying, I need to keep my bishop defending the pawn on b3. My king will do the job of capturing the black pawn. However, after bishop d1, Hikaru has bishop d5. This is the only move to keep Hikaru in the game. And the point is that the bishops and pawn together are taking control of all the squares the white king wants to use to go over and capture that black pawn. So it turns out if Wesley retreats now, which I think he's going to do, then yes, he has a promising position, but he's unable to get his king over to capture this black pawn because Hikaru's bishops are working so well together.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
indeed, bishop d1 has been played. Engines say bishop d5, only saving move for Hikaru.
Yeah, because otherwise king e4 wins the pawn. He will find it. This is not a difficult move.
Well, there is one alternative. Pawn to... Oh, okay, never mind.
Never mind. I like the idea bishop g1, by the way, trying to trade the bishops.
But if we trade the bishops, we lose.
Do we?
Yeah. Well, I don't know how to trade the bishops because white cannot make a...
Yeah, white is kind of in...
White can make a no move. Let's say this.
Yeah, they have to move it.
If we trade the bishops, I think this is big trouble. Okay, engine is saying it's equal, but my impression is like the king will capture here or the king can come up here. Like trading the bishop means that the white king can safely move around on the dark squares because black only has the light square bishop remaining. So I think a trade of bishops would be devastating in general.
Yeah, I agree. It's too risky. If it was a different promotion square, if it was dark square, then we could just run with the king and even sacrifice our bishop for the pawn on b3, but this does not work here.
And also right now, Wesley is threatening the move g5. Wesley is threatening to kind of get rid of this h6 pawn. The only thing stopping white's pawn on the side here right now is the black pawn. So Wesley will try to trade. Actually, there's two things stopping this white pawn. And one of them is the black king. That's why Hikaru now moved this king to h7. It's not a good square for the king. The king would like to be in the center of the board, but the king has to do an important job over here in stopping these white pawns.
And bishop c3 also played.
Yeah, and that's a good move from Wesley because now he's threatening to go king e5. Oh, actually, wow, Hikaru is very clever. King e5, actually, it doesn't do anything. As long as Hikaru has control of the f3 square, Wesley can move his king up the board all he wants, but his bishop on d1 is actually never getting into the game.
Exactly. It's
wow. Yeah, this bishop is it's locked out of the game by the black pieces and the white pieces.
Yeah, and it also cannot really go away very far because then the pawn might start marching up. And it also is defending the pawn on g4. So if the bishop was gone, then our bishop goes to f3 to capture that pawn.
Well, I mean, the bishop cannot move, Maria. That's what I'm saying.
Well, if, for example, g5 was the idea to get...
Oh, sure, yeah. If you give away a pawn, then you open up for the bishop, but then you're giving away a pawn.
Yeah. So it is now
so Hikaru can allow the white king to move into black's territory. Hikaru can afford to hide his king on the edge of the board, and it just doesn't matter because the white bishop doesn't get into the game. That's incredible. I've never seen this kind of defensive maneuver before.
Yeah, this is so intense. It just seemed so equal. It did look symmetrically equal, right?
It did.
And this is how it turned out to be. And it's not like Hikaru blundered anything. Maybe he underestimated h5 and g5 idea a little bit, but he did everything correctly, defending very well, but it still looks really scary.
Okay, bishop g2 played by Hikaru. Oh no, but that's a blunder. That's a blunder. Yeah, because if Hikaru moved the bishop one step back, the white bishop couldn't get out of its cage, because then this black bishop would keep checking the king, and the white king would have to move back and forth because the white king always needed to keep the bishop protected. But now, since Hikaru played bishop g2, now Wesley can go for this bishop f3 move, getting his bishop out of the prison, because if bishop d6 check now, then the king can move to the e4 square and still protect the bishop without being allowed to being captured by the black bishop. But maybe this was Hikaru's plan, because he played very quickly afterwards. Bishop f3, the bishop is out of its cage. Hikaru goes bishop f1. Hikaru's going for the e2 square.
That is scary. I hope
think
he knows
Hikaru
what he's
did
doing.
this on purpose.
Yeah, I hope he knows.
I don't think bishop g2 was a blunder. I think he let the white bishop out of prison on purpose, because Hikaru wants to have his bishop pointing in towards these two white pawns.
Yeah, and also threatening with pushing his pawn once he get a chance. Yeah. Well, we definitely can get some more energy in the chat, because look at the evil bar. Losing. Come on. We need some help. Primers. Guys. Evil bar is showing he's losing. Come on. We need some help. All right.
Yeah,
all right,
I'm trying to figure
right.
out what Wesley can do here. I'm guessing he wants to go with this pawn to g5 move.
Yeah, maybe g5 or
takes. Because now if black does nothing, then the bishop, oh, that's not nothing. It's check on the king. If black does nothing, then check, king moves back, and the white king is helping the pawn forward and has managed to kick the black king out of its defensive position. And here white just wins. There's nothing you can do to stop the pawn.
Yeah, but we definitely will play bishop e3 and then d2.
Yeah, this is true. Bishop e3, much better move. Attacking the king. Oh, and then d2. Yeah, the pawn, we can try to...
Yeah, and then we can start harassing the bishop with bishop g2 and trying to deflect it. Well, yeah, bishop d1 stops it all. But then we can go bishop d3 and bishop c... No, bishop c2 does not work.
Well, maybe we just move our king up.
Just there.
Like there's no way for this white king to attack the two bishops. Because the bishops are kind of just protecting itself. Themselves.
Yeah, this is a perfect fortress.
Wow, this is fascinating. I've never seen like allowing the opponent's king to just walk around, and it turns out it's completely fine because the white king can never attack your guys.
Yeah, and our king is stuck, stopping one single pawn, which we cannot capture, and it's also completely fine. And most importantly, there is no Zugzwang.
It's very, very good for Hikaru that Wesley is spending a lot of time here. Wesley, I think on this move alone, spent 3 minutes now. Wesley's trying to find some kind of attacking plan. And yes, the evaluation bar is not optimistic, but the fact that Wesley's spending this much time thinking seems to suggest that there's no easy solution to the position. Wesley decided to move his king to e4.
Attacking the pawn, and Hikaru immediately plays king g8. So this is probably sort of Tsuktswang has he not had a king move. So he's just...
Wesley now offering a repetition. Hikaru says yes to the repetition. Wesley has just 1 minute left, and Wesley has the opportunity to go back and forth with his bishop for the draw.
Are we getting it? Are we getting a draw?
I think so. I think Wesley's so low on time. He's scared he's going to make some mistake, considering that after all, Hikaru has a pawn just 2 steps away from becoming a new queen. And Wesley's going to feel uncomfortable about continuing this game. Oh, actually, Wesley doesn't have as bad of a time as I thought. I thought Wesley had less than a minute, but we just got updated clock scores. And Wesley has 2 minutes.
I think they repeated again.
Yeah. If Wesley returns to this c3 square with his bishop, this game is over. That would be a 3-time repetition. But Wesley goes for the win. Wesley wants to go for the win here. He chooses a different square for his bishop.
Yeah, and Hikaru does not buy it. He is very suspicious of this move.
I guess Hikaru can just stay here on in the corner with his king.
Yeah. Yeah, king h7.
Hikaru
he also
really
can
have
play
to
bishop
do
b4 with the idea d2.
Bishop b4, d2. But if
is
bishop
it very
d4,
dangerous?
then you
b5 check.
You lose the control of this guy.
But d2, you're not afraid of it?
Oh, apparently I should be.
Yeah,
wow.
Because we have a pin, right?
Bishop g2, incredible move. Sacrificing your bishop to put White's bishop out of its defensive position. And now the bishop is no longer controlling the queening square. The pawn goes in to promote. Okay, wow. Yeah, that was worth being scared of.
Yeah, Hammer got debated by the pawn.
Okay, instead, Hikaru goes bishop to f2. Engine doesn't like it, but I don't really understand what the problem is.
I like the bishops, how they are placed. Personally,
true.
Maybe check now on e5 because
no, but g5 now I think is good.
G5.
So Hikaru's plan is probably to go bishop e1 and then help the pawn forward. Although in that case, why wouldn't he go here and help the pawn forward? This is very tense still. Like, this is still a very complicated game. Wesley knows he's close to getting the win, but he's also low on time. And all you need is one little mistake here, and suddenly you're losing the game.
Yeah, exactly. And he's also very low on time, which makes it more difficult to find the right moves.
The check on the king. King moves over. Wesley can return with his bishop for the draw if he so chooses. No, Wesley once again avoids going back and forth, moves his bishop back to c3, takes control of the e1 square. That means Hikaru cannot complete his plan of playing bishop to e1.
Maybe we can play bishop c5, b4. Try to trade the bishop that way.
Oh, sorry, I forgot. We don't have the... Sorry, what did you say? Bishop c5? Yeah, bishop c5 and then trying to make this trade. But in general, we talked about this earlier, that my initial impression is that if one pair of bishops is traded, it's probably massively to white's favor. That would be like my first instinct. So I don't think Hikaru will dare putting these two bishops up against each other.
Yeah, but here it might be quite concrete, although the king can go back to e3 and stop that pawn, but then it cannot attack our pawns on b6, because once the king goes for our pawns, we can play bishop e2 and win the game.
Yeah, true.
So here it's much more concrete, I guess, that he just doesn't have time to take that pawn.
So the big question right now, can Hikaru find this bishop to b4 move? Will that move be enough to rescue a draw? Or let's not discount the possibility that Hikaru goes bishop b4 and Wesley falls for one of the traps with the pawn being just 2 steps away.
That would be very nice.
From becoming a new queen. I remind everyone, Wesley has less than 1 minute on the clock.
Okay. Hikaru is about to make a move. He's reaching to the bishop, I think.
This has been an incredible endgame. Like, after 20 moves, they basically had traded off everything. Only 2 bishops left each, but ever since then, these 2 bishops... Oh! Wesley played bishop to d2, and the engine is saying this is a 3rd fold repetition. Look at Hikaru's face. The engines are saying this is the 3rd time this position has happened, and Hikaru remembers. Hikaru claims the draw for a 3-fold repetition, and his claim is accepted. The arbiter knew.
Wow. How did he immediately remember that?
Oh, no, he didn't remember. He said that if I now go king g7, it's going to be a 3-fold repetition. But
yeah, but
okay.
He immediately recalled that. That is very impressive.
He's right. And it's confirmed. Handshake. The game is over. Hikaru salvages a draw in a position where his king was locked to the defense of that h6 pawn, which meant that Wesley's king could roam freely in the middle of the board. That caused a dangerous situation for the black pieces. But Hikaru defends tenaciously and also recalls when the same position had occurred previously, makes the correct claim that this position had been on the board twice earlier, meaning that the current position was a 3rd time repetition. And that claim was accepted by the referee currently in the picture, Mr. Chris Bird. Is making sure that these guys follow all the rules, and he is also the one who determined that Hikaru was right for his claim of a draw.
Yeah, amazing defense by Hikaru. Such a difficult, such a tricky position from both sides, actually. And I personally want to welcome all the over 21,000 of people watching us right now. This is incredible. Thank you for being here. Send your love, send your energy. We are waiting for the Blitz match, which is to follow since they finished.
Rapid, Maria, rapid.
Right, rapid. Sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. Yeah. So many time controls that you get easily confused. Yeah, 10 plus 5.
We have 2 more 10-minute games coming up to decide this match. Those games will start in about 35 minutes. So we're going to take a break and we'll be back. We are continuing watching this final of the American Cup between Hikaru Nakamura and Wesley. So they're still tied. So we're going to have additional games to find a winner, although we will find a winner today, some way, one way or another. we will find a winner, but thus far we've been unsuccessful. Both players playing very well, defending well when they have to. Wesley was incredible with his defense in a rook end game down a pawn in the first game. Now Hikaru showcasing his defensive skills when his king was out of play. Let's see if the defensive tenacity continues or if one of these players can create an aggressive masterpiece. The answer to that we'll have in 30 minutes, and we're going to take a break. This is the American Cup, and it is being decided right now. If you want to make your prediction for the game, you got to hurry up. Prediction and channel point betting is up. I'm Jon Ludwig Hammer, together with me, Maria Emilianova, and we will guide you through this rapid playoff. 10 minutes for each players, a 5-second extra per move that's being made. This is the camera from St. Louis, where the tournament is being held. A minute ago, we could see on the camera Hikaru sitting down with the black pieces. So he's going to start out with black. Do you think that is good for Hikaru, Maria?
I think so. I think starting with black pieces is generally better in a 2-game match where the winner goes through. So you just do it as it goes. If you get a chance, you fight for a win. You can press a little bit, but you are always happy with the draw. And then with the white pieces, you can put a lot of pressure. And oops, I think Wesley just almost ran into some kind of column. Wow. Anyway, Hikaru is coming back to the board, and I'm pretty excited. What do you think will be played by Wesley?
Wesley has become slightly unpredictable. Most of the time in classical chess, he's been playing the queen pawn move, but then in rapid play chess, he's been playing the king pawn. So given that we're down to 10 minutes per player, and given the fact that Wesley yesterday in this situation opted for the e4 king pawn move, I guess that's going to be my prediction. But for those of you who followed us yesterday, you may recall we had this same situation 10 minutes on the clock. Wesley won 2 games in a row, but that was a very flattering result for him because, in fact, it was Hikaru with the black pieces in the first game who was putting pressure and having the better chances. And if Hikaru can replicate that today, I think he's going to win this match. I think if he manages to get an advantage out of the opening, he's going to win this game.
Yeah, that means he needs to come up with something, a surprise. We see again Gyoko Gucci piano on the board.
Quick moves coming in from both players, both guys getting their knights out, both players getting their bishops out. Right now, the big difference is that the white king has castled and the black king has not. Well, there goes that difference. Both players getting their rooks in towards the center of the board, moves coming in very, very quickly, which speaks to the fact that these two players have played this opening repeatedly in the past, both against others and against each other.
Wow, yeah, they're playing really fast. Of course, that is no surprise for us so far. I think no game between these two hasn't fallen out of the theory which they played before until like move 20. Very deep into the game, they come up with a novelty, which is sometimes not even a novelty.
And now that the game seems to have quieted down, well, never mind that. Moves keep coming in. Hikaru, with his bishop, offered the trade with white's bishop. That trade was made. Wesley then moving his bishop out to try and influence towards the center of the board. Wesley is trying to attack with his pawns on the queen side, but in the meantime, look at this. Hikaru is moving his pieces over to the king side, trying to reinforce over there. And Wesley, he wants to have his pieces on the same side of the board as Hikaru, both players maneuvering both their knights over to where their kings are.
Yeah, both knights are heading to a4 and a5 respectively. Especially that both bishops are away, not hitting those squares. So that's a perfect opportunity. Yeah, we might see some... Oh, wow. Hikaru is going for h7. He wants to trade off on g5.
Knight h7 plan, knight g5, like Maria said, wanting to trade off with this white piece. Also possible, knight h4, which would try and trade this other knight. What about this, Maria? Knight h4 for Hikaru and then try to bring the rook over.
Yeah, that's also a plan. I'll note the pawn structure on the whites, on the queen side. Looks like some kind of bird. Yeah, it's quite funny. By the way, Hikaru did indeed play this before, but up until knight g3 move by Wesley, he played it against Linier Dominguez, and both times they played, Linier played c4 instead of Wesley's idea d4. So Wesley here plays something completely new, and this has not been played before.
d4 from Wesley, being very aggressive with the pawns. Knight g5, the plan from Hikaru, making a trade between the knights, allowing the queen to get into the game. Hikaru could potentially create an attack here. He already has the queen pointing down on the white king. The knight can get involved. The rook can get involved as well. But yet the engines do seem to prefer white's position.
Yeah, but white has to be really careful. For example, they cannot capture the pawn on e5. That would come with a very nasty blow from Hikaru by taking the knight, using the fact that the pawn on f2 is pinned by this long shooting bishop on a7.
So right now, Wesley is completely committed to keeping this pawn on d4. If that pawn moves at any point, that would basically give Hikaru a winning checkmating attack because it allows the bishop to point down on the white king. So right now, Wesley can deal with the knight, he can deal with the queen, he can deal with the rook. But if the bishop is invited to the party as well, that will be the final straw that broke the camel's back, and that would win the game for Hikaru.
Yeah, and in fact, the engine really likes bishop c1, which is also mentioned in the chat. It does push the queen away, but at the same time, it misplaces the bishop, so probably white will have to play bishop e3 after that.
Instead, Wesley has gone queen g4. So Wesley kind of appreciated the danger white's king would be in. And Wesley was so scared of that black queen pointing down on the white king that he's gone for the... He's trying to trade the queens.
Oh, yeah, Hikaru has quite a short way to make a draw, I guess, with queen d2. Infiltrating.
Queen d2 would attack the bishop?
Yeah, and maybe queen e2 is the most logical response, but then he can just go back.
Potential back and forth here for Hikaru.
But maybe rook e2 is also a possibility. I just feel a bit conscious about placing the pieces on different lines, for the rook's not being connected there, but it's probably fine.
Yeah, the rook could continuously attack
and then it's
the
just
black queen. But at this moment, do you think Wesley wants a draw with the white pieces?
No, he had so many chances to accept a draw in the second game of the rapid match. Oh, sorry, of the fast classical. I'm not sure how to call it, long rapid or very short classic. Anyway, the second game today, he opted out of accepting a repetition so many times in a much more drawish situation than here. So he probably will continue trying to fight.
He basically is trying to go for the win, but without having the black queen pointing on the white king. So Wesley's idea of trading queens is not about a lack of ambition. It's more about how he wants to eliminate the black queen, not to have any risk of getting checkmated.
Exactly. And also if black takes on g4, I think he gets an improvement in his pawn structure because the pawn on g4 will be controlling f5 square. And although the black knight can also go to f4, it also can be kicked out from there. And then the white knight instead can jump on f5. And I think Hikaru's pawn structure does not easily allow to kick away the knight there.
Knight well placed, while also having the pawn to make sure that black cannot replicate that plan. Hikaru thought for quite a bit and decided to double his rooks. Is this controversial, Maria? He doubles his rooks in a file that's being blocked by the black pawn. Two rooks, both pointing in towards the black pawn.
Yeah, but he's also sort of indicating that he is planning to take on d4 and he's not worried about white capturing e5 because then he can recapture with the knight. And as we mentioned before, the bishop becomes so strong on this diagonal. So the white pawn, the white pawn on d4 is not really pinned, but it is protecting the white's position from a lot of problems coming up with this bishop. So Hikaru can take it at any point. And then the e-file will become the main platform of the battle, I guess.
So a rook to d1 keeps the tension between these two pawns in the middle. Hikaru now decides to make the trade of queens. Then he makes, look at this, just 4 moves coming in at the same time. When he made his decision, he had all the moves ready, making the trade between the queens, making the trade between the pawns. And now we see why Hikaru had those 2 rooks, both in the center. He was ready to exert pressure on white's position, following up with the move d5. Now, this pawn in the middle cannot be captured because that would open up for both of the black rooks against the white rook, resulting in a trade, leaving black up an entire rook. So Wesley, he decides this rook needs protection, moves over with his king, but then Hikaru can capture a free pawn.
Yeah, and also e5 was not possible due to f6, so he had everything ready for attacking this pawn.
That would have been bad for Wesley. Had he moved the pawn forward, the attack from the black pawn would result in Hikaru getting a very, very good position. But now the question remains, after king f1, can Hikaru capture a free pawn in the center? And actually,
there might be some problems.
Yeah. Because if you capture this pawn, you allow the white pawn to continue forward, attacking the rook. And when the rook moves away, the knight comes in, attacking the rook, but also working together with the white bishop against the black pawn on, let's do it in green, on g7. So this actually would be losing for Hikaru, despite initially grabbing a free pawn.
Yeah, so we need to prepare and prevent all this from happening after a trade, after capturing e4. So maybe f6 is one of the ways to protect g7.
Yes, it would appear that f6 has been played by Hikaru, judging by the video feed. Wesley then plays f3 very similarly, giving protection to that pawn in the center.
All right.
Did you catch what Hikaru did then? Did Hikaru play c6? I think he did. c6, protecting the pawn in the center, and Wesley just captures in the center. And now Hikaru has to make the decision, how many rooks do you want to leave on the board? Do you want to trade all the rooks, in which case you should capture the white rook, or do you just want to trade one rook, in which you should recapture in the center?
I feel like his pieces might be slightly stronger than Wesley's, so trading both pairs of rooks would make sense.
Maybe, but Hikaru has decided to capture in the center. So Hikaru judges that all his pieces are good, but actually they're so good that the black rook is better than the white rook. So Hikaru keeps both those pieces on the board.
I guess he always has a chance to trade the other pair of rooks by trying to take control over c-file, for example, and forcing white to offer a trade. But then it would be on his terms.
Yeah, speaking of the c-file, this seems ripe for a rook to get involved. Unfortunately, it's Wesley's turn right now. So Wesley takes this opportunity to move his rook over, have that rook threatened down towards the c7 square. That is uncomfortable. Hikaru is going to want to prevent that. I'm thinking rook to c6, offering the trade between the rooks. And in case of a trade, all the black pawns are on light squares, which mean they work very nicely together with the black bishop working on dark squares. As a general rule, if you only have one bishop, you want the bishop and pawns to be on opposite color specters, because they're both pieces that capture diagonally. So if your pawns are on the light squares, they're controlling the light squares. You need someone to control the dark squares. It's perfect to have a bishop doing that job. And rook c6 is on the board from Hikaru.
Yeah, so now Wesley has a choice of trading on c6 and going for this position of the pawn on c6. Or he can also allow Hikaru to take the rook and make some other improving move instead, like knight f5 or
knight f5 is played by Wesley, improving the positioning.
All right, so now should we take on c1?
I would think so.
Or bring the king, maybe king f7.
Rook takes rook, or maybe bishop back to b8. Both of those seem sensible.
Yeah, maybe not king f7, maybe to be a bit more careful, and king f8. So that
king f7 has been played though.
Okay, it's fine. Because now if we take on c1, white cannot immediately give a check on d6. They have to first take care of the rook. But this is...
Yeah, you can trade and then move in with your knight, but the black king will just follow the knight. Ooh, actually, then the knight can sneak its way in on the bottom rank, attack the pawn on g7. And if the king moves back then the knight actually has managed to snake its way to the a6 pawn, which is undefended, and not only undefended, but impossible to defend. Wow, it turns out after this knight coming forward and the king moving up, there was some trickery with the rook trade. However, instead, Wesley has gone to push his pawn forward. The pawn now attacking the black rook. We're expecting things to be traded off right now. Both the rooks and the pawns gonna disappear off the board. But here, Wesley is threatening to use his knight to capture the b7 pawn.
So we have to prevent the knight from going to d6.
And all of these moves have been played. Hikaru did indeed trade the rooks when forced to do so by the white pawn. He's also traded the pawns. which kind of tells us that Hikaru now is considering this to be a defensive effort. In general, when you're trying to defend, you want to trade pawns, which Hikaru did here. Now he has to deal with the knight trying to go rogue, trying to attack both the black king and the black pawn.
Yeah, and
from the
like
d6 square.
B8 is the only move.
Yeah, but it makes a lot of sense though. Bishop here taking control of the square.
Yeah, we cannot do it with the king since g7 needs to be defended as well.
Also, maybe Hikaru can move his knight back. If Hikaru goes knight back, he's offering the trade. It does allow the white knight to make a fork, but then the black king gets up into a better position. And even though white captures a black pawn, black will capture a white pawn afterwards.
Oh, okay. That makes sense. And also the white knight is kind of misplaced now.
I mean, if the black king could move over here and capture the white pawn, that would be optimal. But if we're not able to capture the white pawn, this pawn might be annoying in the future. Okay, exactly. Let's see what Hikaru goes for. Knight f8, unexpected. The knight comes in from Wesley, attacking both the king and the pawn. Hikaru moves his king up to attack the knight. The knight captures a black pawn, and we capture a white pawn. All this was part of Hikaru's calculations, I think.
Yeah, he played it pretty quickly, it seems. Yes, all this happens. Just the knight on a different square.
And maybe on a better square.
Maybe.
Because now if Wesley goes bishop to a3, which he did, pointing down on the knight, now Hikaru can go knight to d7. With the knight taking control of the c5 square so that the knight cannot return. Oh, actually, this is not good. Oh, this is not good. Then the white knight would be able to jump around, attacking the black king, forcing the king into a fork and capturing a bishop. Hikaru saw that, though. Hikaru saw that trick and decided to move his knight over to the other side of the board instead. But now this knight is not contributing in the fight against white's pawn. Wesley with his knight to d6. Okay, so Wesley is trying to attack the pawn on g7.
Yeah, he saw everything. That's great. He lost the tempo even too, but that's fine. The position is still equal.
It's equal, but it's uncomfortable. Because we talked about this earlier. When you have a pawn that's further away from the rest of the gang, let's do them in green. So when you have, oh wow, look at this move from Hikaru.
Yeah, this is great. This is tactical exchange of pieces. And now if Wesley does not like this exchange, taking the bishop while black recaptures the knight, he will try to go away, but then the bishop keeps chasing the bishop and offers the same trade again and again, so he cannot avoid it.
Wow, what a resource found by Hikaru. And Hikaru, they go back and forth. Hikaru keeps chasing after the white bishop. Hikaru cares about this knight on f5 on d6. He wants to prevent this knight from attacking the black pawns on the king's side, and in order to do so, Hikaru is sacrificing his bishop to get rid of the knight. Ooh, but look at that! Look at that play from Wesley. Bishop c5. Hikaru goes for that trading sequence, and Wesley manages to rescue his knight. So they still have to trade, but Hikaru didn't get rid of the pesky knight. He's still having to deal with this guy jumping around.
Yeah.
And look at this. Wesley even sacrifices the knight. Because Wesley sees that if that knight is captured, then the pawn moves in and becomes a new queen.
Yeah, that's how far away is our knight.
So Hikaru needs to get this knight back into play. We need to stop this white pawn. The good thing right now is that if we do manage to stop the pawn, there's a fair chance we will take it for free. Our king is very close.
Yeah. But then maybe he has another trick, like knight to e6. Yeah, knight f8 seems like the only way to prevent knight e6 check.
Yeah, knight f8 feels right because it prevents these squares where the white knight wants to move. The problem is when the pawn then progresses, the king has to go back, and now we're no longer threatening this white knight. We have no way of getting this knight out of its position.
And white can bring the king while black cannot do anything.
The king will just come forward, capture the black pawn, and it's game over. So Hikaru is going to find another way with his knight. Hikaru moves his knight up in the center of the board. Wesley pushes the pawn forward, one step away from becoming a new queen. Hikaru moves back with his king. Wesley, now he brings the king.
Yeah, he could have played knight e6 and win the pawn on a g7, but he decided he can do it later. While black cannot do anything against his pawn or knight, so he's just bringing the king over.
Hikaru pushes his pawn forward in the center. That pawn is not going anywhere. Wesley's king has got the situation under control. However, now Hikaru has a nice blockade here. He's controlling all these squares that the white king would like to use to get into the heart of black's position.
But playing d3 is probably would be a mistake. He just needs to keep this position up.
Yeah, just keep these pieces controlling all the squares the white king wants to use.
Okay, so he just played g6, king g2.
Wesley is just going back and forth, back and forth. Maybe he's relying on Hikaru to run out of good defensive moves. Here's h5, though. Hikaru manages to get another trade of pawns, but now the white king is trying to find a new path to infiltrate.
Yeah, so king e2, but then he cannot go far away because of d3 threat. That is still a bit double-edged.
The big question to me right now is what happens if Hikaru pushes forward with h4, then f4 will dislodge the knight's positioning. Hikaru decides to avoid this f4 move by taking control of that square with his own knight. That was the best move for Hikaru according to the computer engines.
And now white can play maybe king f2, but then...
Well, Wesley can go knight e6.
He can, but then we're
knight e6 and capture the pawn on d4. And he can argue that the black pawns are what we call split pawns. They are unable to defend each other. And then the question becomes, will Hikaru manage to get his king back into defense before Wesley manages to create an attack over here?
Yeah, I have a feeling that he can be in time, just in time to trade the pawns. And once he trades one pair of pawns, he can give up his knight for the remaining white pawn, and then it's a draw. So maybe, yeah, something like knight f4, then h4, h3.
Trying to trade off pawns. That is the key defensive idea in basically every endgame. Instead, Wesley moves his king over to f2. Hikaru pushes forward on the side of the board. Wesley now down to just 20 seconds on the clock. Wesley is pushing for a win, but right now it doesn't seem like there is any idea, and he's running out of time.
Yeah, knight e6 seems to be the only move that he can do.
He does go for that move. Check on the king. The king now captures the pawn. Wesley captures a pawn as well. Will Hikaru rush back with his king? Yes, he will. But now Wesley comes up with his king.
King d7 or d6? No,
it's
I don't
a race
like d6,
for both
d7.
players to get their kings involved. Wesley's still pushing for the win, getting the king up now to try and attack both the knight and the pawn. Hikaru rushes back into defense.
King f5, I guess. Hikaru just needs to trade one pawn.
Yeah, but right now this pawn on h4 is about to be surrounded. King f5 has been played. Hikaru defends with his king, but now king g4. There will be no way to defend the pawn on h4. Hikaru just gives it up. So Hikaru now down a pawn in this endgame. But there are so few pawns left. So the chance of making a draw is excellent despite being down a pawn. Hikaru gives a check. King moves over. Hikaru gives another check.
There is no way to progress here.
Well, so what they say about knight endgames is that knight endgames are very similar to pawn endgames.
Mm-hmm.
And in pawn endgames, if you're up a pawn, you almost always win.
That's true. But there must be exceptions.
There's definitely exceptions, but this is going to be a tricky defense for Hikaru. Even though Wesley only has 2 pawns left, I wouldn't take it for granted that you defend easily here. Knight d7 from Hikaru. Wesley moves his knight up. Hikaru's jumping around with the knight. So far, so good. As long as Wesley is unable to use his king to attack the pawn on f6, there's no chance Wesley is winning this. And that's why Hikaru moved his knight over to b6. The knight is controlling the d5 square so that the white king cannot come in and attack the black pawn.
Keeping him at arm's length. Because if Wesley goes the longer route trying to come to that square, then Hikaru has time to come with his king to g3 and capture his...
Oh, yeah, maybe the king, yeah. I was going to use the knight, but it's better to use the king. Wesley tries a trade of pawns. No, trade of knights, I mean.
Yeah, no chance.
If you agree to this draw...
He has to... Well, he also has a 5. Tricky move.
Well, Hikaru doesn't really want to push this pawn forward because that would make it easier for the white pawn to attack the black pawn.
Yeah, Wesley is like down to 5 seconds.
Yeah, but he has an extra pawn.
It is also easier for him to play. Now he can play king d5, but then knight comes to attack on g2. g3 played.
The white pawns are making sure that the black king cannot move forward.
Well, he can still attack the pawns. He can attack with knight f2, h1.
Now, f5 is a draw according to the engines. Hikaru has 1 minute to calculate.
Well, yeah, f5 comes with the threat of f4, and
yeah, but it's tricky.
To save the knight.
f5, engine says king d4, attacking, and then knight f4. I don't know if this is necessary, but like it
looks
pretty
nice.
Spooky.
It does look very nice.
Hikaru decides against playing f5, instead retreats his king, allowing Wesley to push forward.
Maybe knight f2. Knight f2, knight h1. I like that. Or no, it doesn't feel natural.
It feels a bit strange moving your knight into the corner, but it's important to attack the opponent's pawn.
Yeah, but how else? Knight c1, e2.
Hikaru does go for knight f2.
Well, yeah, if white plays with a knight, then we can also play knight g4. And it's
Wesley moves his king close to the pawn. This is the danger zone.
We need to go back with a check. Oh, now knight e4, great. Now he also threatens with a check.
Hikaru attacking the pawn on g3. Wesley defending. But now, like Maria said, we can give a check and force the king back.
And
check on the board. King attacks the knight. The knight moves away, but then the white knight moves forward. The knight gives a check on the king. The king moves back into its dangerous position. Hikaru moves up on the side of the board. According to the engines, this was the only move for Hikaru not to lose the game.
Wow.
He's coming into c5. He's coming into c5 to give a check on the king yet again. The knight moves forward, attacking the pawn together with the king. Hikaru immediately check on the king. King moves back.
And knight e4 defends the pawn.
Yeah, knight e4 attacks the pawn, defends the pawn, does everything.
And now if g4,
pawn moves
we have
forward, and Hikaru goes for the trade of pawns. Well done, Hikaru. Good defense. He manages to get the trade of the pawns because if Wesley moves forward, then Hikaru can capture it. And Hikaru here gets both of the pawns. And in the end, only king and knight remaining, not enough to give checkmate. The game is a draw, but there will only be a short break now. We've been used to having these half-hour breaks between games. That is not happening again. The next game will start in about 2 minutes with Hikaru having the white pieces, having defended this very tricky endgame down a pawn successfully.
Yeah, all 3 draws today, all 3 draws. So the next game might be decisive. So stay tuned. We are going to cover that game in just a very, very short while.
We'll take a break in those 1 or 2 minutes until the next game starts. We are back with what could potentially be the final decisive game of the American Cup. I'm Jon Ludwig Hammer, and together with Maria Emilianova, we're going to guide you through this game. The 4th game of the day, Hikaru Nakamura with the white pieces. He is in a position to win the match if he wins this game. After the draw in the previous game, it means that a win here means Hikaru wins the tournament. If Wesley wins the tournament. And in case of a draw, we will move on to 3-minute games. So this is at the height of tension right now, Maria.
Yeah, indeed. It's a perfect position now to be with the white pieces, having to not to take any risks. He doesn't have to push or over push. He can just look for opportunities and go for it if there is a clear advantage, or draw is also fine, and blitz is definitely Hikaru's best time control, and he will be happy to move to another 2 games with the blitz.
Yeah, that's a very good point, Maria. If you're Hikaru and had Hikaru's chess playing abilities, would you go for a quick draw now with the white pieces to put the game into the blitz? Or would you try to go with the win using the advantage of the white pieces?
I think there is no need for a quick draw. He won't give away the white pieces so easy. Wesley has proven that he won't do that, although in the past, quite often we saw him doing a very quick Berlin draw. But here they are really fighting to the nails, and they will both play with the white pieces for as long as they can.
The reason I ask is because the last time these 2 players were in the blitz tie breaks, Hikaru managed to win both with the black pieces and the white pieces to convincingly win the match. We'll find out now because the game has started. Knight out from Hikaru, pawn up in the center, pawn forward in front of the king, 1 step. This is the same opening these 2 players used in their first game of the evening.
Yeah, indeed, it's repeating it entirely. We will see if Hikaru will play b3. He does.
So far, all the same moves as previously today.
Following some games that he played before, as well as Wesley.
Rook c1, new move from Hikaru. Last time we had this position, Hikaru played his pawn forward in the center. Here, instead, he moves his rook in. And frankly, this rook may be here to protect the white knight. We saw in the initial game, these two played, that the white knight got a lot of pressure on it with the black knight, the black bishop, even the black queen, all of them pointing in towards that knight. Hikaru now may feel like it needs some extra protection early on. The disadvantage of this way of playing is that now Wesley can push his pawn forward in the center and thereby block the bishop's diagonal by putting the pawn in the way.
Indeed, and I can confirm that Rook c1 is a novelty, that this move has not been played in any of Grandmaster's game before. So Hikaru is trying to go for something maybe a little bit against the opening principles, allowing d4, but at the same time surprising his opponent, putting him low on time, and potentially making him make a mistake.
Do you think this is something Hikaru discovered in the break? Or do you think this is some kind of opening knowledge he's been saving for a very, very important moment and decided, I'm in the final, I need to win this game, let's go for it?
I think it's the latter. I don't think they even have any access to engines or computers in the breaks. It's not enough time. But Hikaru probably prepared this for tiebreak specifically because, and that's why he also played this opening in the first game today to see how Wesley will respond, and then to prepare him to see the same moves, but then to have this blown move 8, which definitely is also psychologically knocking your opponent off.
Yeah, and in fact, changing the move 8 has given Hikaru a 2.5-minute lead on the clock. Wesley does go for the critical pawn forward in the center to attack the white knight and prevent the white pawn from moving up there. But after knight a4, both the knight and the rook is pointing towards the pawn on c5. In addition, there are plenty of white pieces having pressure against the pawn on d4. Wesley has 2 pawns under attack right now, and he doesn't know what to do.
It's not so easy to find what to do. With b6, you will probably get an exchange on d4, and the pieces are still undeveloped.
So pawn to b6 was possible to create protection, but it doesn't protect as far as the pawn on d4. Hikaru would have then been up a pawn. Instead, Wesley decides to first make the trade with the white pawn. Hikaru recaptures, and then now Wesley is going to move his pawn forward so that everything's defended.
Yeah, so he captures with f pawn. Interesting. So he's not afraid to open up his king a little bit.
Taking with the pawn that was standing on f2 opens up a little bit around the white king, but it also gives Hikaru the potential of having a rook pointing down this half-open file, as we call it, when you have no pawn standing in the rook's path.
And it's interesting that the engine, this evil bar, is slightly preferring Wesley right now. But that might be
Wesley on the board, but Wesley on the clock is not doing okay.
No.
Wesley here moving his knight forward to the d5 square. The idea is to make trades. Bishop f6 trying to trade with this very potentially dangerous white bishop pointing down on the black king. I'm expecting Hikaru to castle, and then after bishop to f6, we can see maybe bishop to c4. That would be my prediction.
Yeah, to cleverly use the knight placed maybe badly on a4, but ready to recapture on b2. And yeah, it might be a slightly worse position, at least according to the engine, but at least it looks like Hikaru is completely in his prep still.
Instead, Hikaru decides to castle, normally sensible. And Wesley doesn't go for the trade I was expecting. Instead, he moves his knight into the center of the board. He still has the option of trying to trade the bishops afterwards.
Then maybe queen to c2 or something, or maybe bishop c4. I like your idea with bishop c4.
Hikaru's played queen e1. He wants to bring the queen over to point down on the black king.
And Hikaru still did not spend more than 30 seconds on an entire game.
This time advantage Hikaru has built himself can be so crucial when it's crunch time.
Exactly. And Wesley still has to figure out every single move while Hikaru is in the prep. And each move
I don't think Hikaru's in the prep. I think Hikaru's just playing quickly to put pressure on his opponent.
I think he would not have gone for a completely new move without having a few moves prepared up his sleeve. Maybe after knight to c6, he just had some ideas prepared. Maybe not this exact line of moves, but I have a feeling he was prepared here.
Hikaru gets his queen where he wants it, pointing down on that black king. Wesley gets what he wanted, the trade. Hikaru agrees to the trade. But then the question becomes, how do you get your pieces involved in the attack thereafter? Wesley will now take back with his knight, because if he takes back with the queen, that could be dangerous. Having the rook and queen on the same file.
Yeah, that is probably not something you would play willingly.
So instead, Wesley takes back with the knight. Hikaru now decides to move this guy back into the game, controlling the square e4 where the black knight was planning to go to chase away the white queen. And now Hikaru has a very nice plan, knight h4. If Wesley moves his rook to the open file, pointing down the board, knight h4 is an amazing move for Hikaru. Because if this knight is allowed to contribute in the attack together with the queen, that's just a checkmating attack. Like, there's nothing Wesley can do to avoid the loss if we get this far.
Exactly.
So Wesley needs to prevent this idea. And instead, Wesley does not prevent that idea. Wesley moves his knight over on the queen side. Nothing is happening there, Mr. Wesley. Your king is not on that side of the board. Your pieces need to go over to defend your king. Now Hikaru has this option. Knight h4, moving the knight forward to the f5 square. That's a checkmating attack brewing.
No, that's fine, Wesley. You can continue. Take your chances. Attack on the queen's side.
You do not have the man's best interests at heart.
No. That's
Hikaru
fine.
doesn't go for this knight up to the f5 square. Instead, knight e5. Same idea, opening up for the rook.
And what will he do? Just go for something innocent like rook c8. Right?
I don't know. Bishop c4 is coming. This is Hikaru's plan. The bishop and the knight working together.
Yeah, but Wesley doesn't know that.
I think he's starting to suspect.
Rook e8 is fine. Attack the knight.
I think he's starting to suspect that something is up. And also look at the clocks. Wesley's down 4 minutes.
Wow. That's half the time of that Hikaru has on the clock. Wow. And he's still thinking. He's still thinking.
Now he's down 4.5 minutes.
Let's be quiet. Let's be quiet and let him think. Let the man think. Let him cook. Well, chat.
Wow.
Yeah,
this is why he was thinking. There was
a free pawn only. Wow.
But it's not a free pawn. It's a big mistake. His queen is trapped. Wesley just lost the game in one move.
What's wrong with...
Hikaru cannot believe what he's seeing. He's moving his rook over, attacking the queen. Now the queen only has one square to go to, but then the knight comes in to take the queen. The tournament is over. Hikaru wins. Wesley shakes his head. He thought about that for such a long time, and he ended up getting his queen trapped in one move, in two moves.
Wow. I feel partially responsible, and I'm sorry to Wesley, but did I make that happen?
That is the biggest blunder we've seen between these two players the entire tournament. Unbelievable. Wesley's been so good for so long, and then he makes just one catastrophic move and the tournament is over. And he knows it. He's shaking his head. He cannot believe what he's done.
Wow. What a way. It's not the way you want to finish the tournament. Even if you lose, not like this, right? That's such a
Wesley's
shame.
Just going to resign.
Or maybe he will continue playing like Arena yesterday.
No, I don't think so. I think he's just going to resign.
Wow.
His queen is trapped. So what we have on the analysis board now is a variation. Hikaru has gone with his rook. Okay, the queen moves away. The knight comes in, traps the queen.
He missed knight c4.
And he resigns. It's over. Hikaru wins the American Cup in a bizarre fashion. After having played toe-to-toe with Hikaru for such a long time, Wesley makes one little mistake. He took a poisoned pawn, trapping his own queen. Wow,
it's sometimes called brain fart, right? When you kind of saw it, you calculated, it did not work, and then somehow you come back to it and you do this move anyway. Did it happen to you?
I mean, of course it happened. It happens to everyone. But the thing is, you hope it happens in a kind of unimportant moment. Mm-hmm. For it to happen at the biggest stage like this is so unfortunate for Wesley, especially given how he had gone toe-to-toe with Hikaru for this entire week. But at the same time, I want to stress, this mistake did not come out of nothing. This position we had on the board, Wesley was under pressure. He was under a lot of pressure, and that's why he made the mistake. He wouldn't have made that mistake unless Hikaru was pointing his queen towards the king, the rook, getting ready to get the bishop involved. If Hikaru didn't have unpleasant threats on black, Wesley wouldn't even be considering capturing this pawn, or at the very least, he wouldn't make such a mistake. He wouldn't be so low on time.
Yeah. The reason he went for it without fully estimating the danger is because he was low on time. He was lower than 4 minutes left, and it's just the opening. They usually, in all the previous games, by this time, they still were in the theory. They both were in the known territory. And here, Hikaru went for this very creative rook c1 move, which completely deviated from the theory and surprised Wesley, and he started losing time move by move, and that led to a so-called Bottas gambit, which he just did.
And look at them, they're still discussing the game.
It was just starting.
I'm amazed by Wesley. Had I made a blunder like the one Wesley did, I would not be in the playing venue right now. I would just run away as quickly as my little legs could carry me. And then I would be swearing and hitting, and I would be doing some destruction. But Wesley calmly analyzes with Hikaru, discussing both this game and the match as a whole.
Is that how all Norwegians react to losing an important game?
Norwegian chess players born 1990 at the very least.
Yeah. There is some distraction usually in the toilets. Yep. Respect to Wesley, of course. Wesley played a fantastic tournament. he lost to Hikaru in the main bracket. He went to elimination bracket. He won there. He came back. He won against Hikaru, preventing Hikaru from winning outright without a second match. And today, it all looked like we are in for a long tiebreak, maybe even Armageddon. But suddenly, this surprise in the opening by Hikaru was just in time. And maybe Wesley just lost a little bit of concentration for a bit, and that's what happened. But Hikaru has put him in this situation. It did not just happen out of nowhere. It's definitely his preparation and his trick, his surprise up his sleeve for the opening that led Wesley to go solo on time. He is currently below 3 minutes after the end of the game. So that's how much time he spent, over 8 minutes.
Yeah. Wow. What a way to decide all of this. What an illustration of the tension these players have been feeling. I mean, you cannot imagine Wesley So making a mistake like that without being tremendously stressed. And it showcases how much this tournament means to them. It showcases, like we talked about, how much pressure Hikaru put with his unusual opening early on. And wow, congratulations to Hikaru, winner of this American Cup. And also now number 5 in the world. Hikaru climbs 1 spot on the world ranking lists in this tournament.
Wow. What a tournament. What a roller coaster we've seen. It was incredible fight by all of the players. And of course, especially Wesley. We have to give him a credit for his fantastic play throughout the tournament. Very solid, very creative, and of course Hikaru, the man himself. Not only did he play amazing games and gave us so much joy and happiness to watch that, but also every day, sometimes even before the show was over, he was also recording the recaps. And if you missed any of those, definitely spend the evening of watching all of them, because some of the games are really, really fantastic and deserve to be watched on its own, and especially with his commentary.
Yeah, I mean, I'm still reeling from the game 2 days ago. Hikaru sacrificing his queen, then sacrificing his bishop, trying to trap the Black King on the edge of the board. Then he made a mistake, and then Wesley could win. It was such an epic struggle, ending in a stalemate. If you guys missed out on that game, you have to search Hikaru's YouTube for it. It was completely epic. And in general, these two players, they end up playing not 1, not 2, but actually 3 matches against each other. That's how close and competitive they were. Hikaru won the first one. Wesley comes back to win the second, and everything is decided in this final third one today. Right now, we are waiting for the interview Hikaru is going to do in St. Louis. So stay tuned. This is not over. We really want to hear Hikaru's thoughts on this.
Hikaru, so many hours, so many games spent in the presence of this worthy opponent, Wesley. So sum up your feelings right now after this incredible match.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy. I think this match, I mean, frankly, the way that I look at it is it really came down to who won that first match in the champions bracket in terms of who was likely going to win. I mean, we're so evenly matched. You know, Wesley won yesterday. I won today. I mean, I would say that I think actually today Wesley was clearly the better player. I was not very sharp. Even though maybe the games don't look so bad, my calculation was horrible, especially in this first 10-minute game, this third game we played today. I mean, I thought I was just much better, and the next thing I know, I'm just like losing. I mean, I don't know if I'm actually losing, but I'm much worse in a knight endgame. And so I think my calculation wasn't great. I think Wesley was just better, but fortunately in the final game, I had this little silly idea with knight a4, and I was kind of hoping Wesley would make a blunder because after playing so many games, it's nice to have a simple win there. So it's tough, but I mean, I think either of us could have won. It just ended up being me though at the end of the day.
You surely wanted to end the matches and the championship yesterday. Unfortunately for you, you weren't able to do so. What did you tell yourself at night trying to get ready for this matchup?
Well, I mean, I was very, very upset with myself. Without specifying, there's some other stuff going on that's significantly bigger than this tournament that I'll be announcing in the very near future that I've been dealing with throughout the event. So I was pretty upset because if I had the free day today, I could have taken care of some other stuff. But really, it's just sort of, I had to reset because coming into this tournament, I had one goal, which is basically, don't make a fool of myself and don't lose like 10 or 15 rating points in Classical. That was my only goal. I know a lot of people will think that I'm just like showboating or making stuff up, but that was really the only goal I had in mind. And so, when I looked at yesterday, having lost that match, I accomplished the first goal, which was not to lose a ton of points. And then it's sort of, if you could have told me I'd be playing a tiebreaker against Wesley for all the marbles today, I would be happy with that. And so that's really just the attitude I had. But even beyond that, I mean, last night, I actually didn't really look at chess. I didn't do a recap. I didn't look at chess. I went out, had some beers, played some pool, and just forgot about everything. And it seemed to work out. So I just tried to get past it as quickly as I could.
It definitely did. Now let's talk about this final moment in this game. You played this move knight to e5. Did you think that he could ever touch that pawn on d2 in your wildest dreams?
No. I mean, I saw that it was just a blunder because the rook d1, knight c4 instantly. But the thing is, it's weird because and this is one of the dangers of using computers if you don't have all day, is this knight a4 move, which I played on move number 9. I deviated from the earlier game with this whole rook c1, knight a4.
Yep.
I had looked at quite a few different moves here that were interesting, like queen a5 and b6 and other things. And then as Wesley was thinking for like a minute here, I'm like, well, why can't he just take on e3 and play b6 like he did in the game? So, I mean, it's like I got the time edge, but then when he did this, I'm like, well, what am I doing? I mean, I guess I should have taken with a d-pawn, but after playing for so long, it's like, why do I want to play one of these end games? I mean, it's just, I felt like I should take my chances.
Yep.
I don't think what I did was great. I think for Wesley, he just missed, well, we both missed it, of course, but after, in these positions where I go like, where I go knight c3. I think he has knight e7 here at some point. Maybe not right away, but I thought he had knight e7 and knight g6. Because the way that I felt about the position is the only plan I had was to play like knight h4, knight f5, or like knight e5, knight g5. It feels like I should have something, but if black gets those two knights on f6 and g6, I don't even know, I mean, where's my center play? I can't really play d4 easily. I can't go e4, so I don't know. If he'd done this, I think there's a good chance Wesley would have been the winner, actually. But fortunately, he played knight b4. I got knight e5, and then when he was thinking for a while, and like right before he played this move, I think he like looked up and looked at me, and that's when I was like, I had a feeling he was actually going to play queen takes d2. And I mean, after a long day, it's a tragedy for the match to end this way, of course, but it's it's what it is.
Long tournament, long day as well at the office, guys. Join the conversation.
Really, I just have to say congratulations. I thought you just played terrific throughout. You're a very, very deserving winner. I know you call yourself an amateur, Hikaru, but you're beating the best pros that America could put up against you.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's like, it's funny because I never, like, if you go back even like 3 years. I mean, I never would do this, but actually when I've won some of these matches, like, when I beat Wesley here, I said sorry because, I mean, obviously for him winning this tournament would mean a lot more than it means for me. And I mean, not trying to diminish it in any way, but I mean, I do feel bad on some level because like I'm just here trying not to make a fool of myself, and then I find a way to win. So yeah, I mean, it's not going to change anything though. Let's put it that way. I know some people think that it might change. I might have some grand ambitions. I'll play some tournaments. Maybe I'll qualify for the candidates. Maybe I won't. Who cares?
So what actually is next for you, Hikaru?
Yeah, so I mean, also, another thing I have to say is, I mean, I have to give a lot of credit to Wesley because playing like 8 days in a row was very hard. Well, I mean, I know I had the one rest day, but playing like 8 days in a row was very hard. But Wesley had to play, I think, 9 days in a row, if I'm not mistaken. So he had to play every day here. I think he played in Germany. He played the Armageddon. He played the previous classical event. He played Tata Steel. So, I mean, Wesley's been playing nonstop for 2 or 3 months now. And I mean, considering how tired I'm sure he had to be, his play was really, really good. So, I mean, mean, a lot of props to Wesley for that. Of course, for all of us, we now have the great joy of going and playing this Chess Champions Tour event in like 4 days or something. I don't know. It's very, very soon. So I'll be playing that. And then after that, I think finally things slow down and I have this event in Norway Chess, which will be at the end of May. Maybe there's a Champions Tour event before that, but that's what I have coming up. So it'll be exciting.
One final question. Wesley did mention yesterday that you stream 24/7 and yet you still play at the elite level. How do you do it?
How do I do it? I mean, it's very difficult. I think, I think one of the most important things is that because I'm not studying every day, I'm not playing all these tournaments, it's not as much of a grind. I think when you go from tournament to tournament and you play the same players, like say in 4 days I have to play Wesley. Well, I mean, maybe I will actually in this Chess Champions Tour event. But when you have to play the same players, you look at these same openings over and over and over again for weeks, if not months on end. I think that chess isn't so fresh. You start to get like bored, you start to get annoyed. I mean, there are a lot of different emotions that you have. And so for me, I think I'm able to just sort of look at it as like trying to play interesting chess, trying to have some fun and really enjoying it because I know that I'm not going to get an opportunity anytime soon to play over the board chess. So that's just the mindset I have. I mean, it seems to work for me. But also beyond that, I think it's just that I am sort of playing with house money all the time. And I'm just trying to come with ideas, trying to surprise my opponents. I think there's a lot more on the line for them. There's much more pressure than there is for me. So I just find a way to make it work. But it's not easy. It's not easy at all.
Hikaru, congratulations. You are the 2023 American Cup champion.
Thank you, guys.
That was Hikaru Nakamura sharing his thoughts on this incredible win at the buzzer, going up against Wesley So. And do you have anything you want to add to that, Maria?
Yeah, I just wanted to point how in the interview today, Hikaru was praising Wesley for playing fantastic chess after so many games. And I actually... We all, I think, get so used to players playing non-stop because it's their job. But it is still very, very difficult to stay in shape after 3 months of non-stop play. And I did see Wesley myself in Berlin playing Armageddon. And he was saying how it is difficult to fight all the jet lag, and actually his flight back from Berlin was cancelled due to strikes, so he had to come 1 day later to the American Cup. So he was again jet lagged, and it does definitely affect your game. And props to Hikaru. He did mention that Wesley still played fantastic chess, but Wesley, on the other hand, yesterday did praise Hikaru for definitely being much more than just a professional chess player, but also the best chess streamer. And he was streaming every day. And Wesley mentioned that this is also very, very difficult. So not only they are both definitely the best chess players right now in the US, but they are also really, really respect each other and appreciate what one and the other are doing for chess in the US and in the world. It's really amazing.
And we also saw Hikaru talking about his next couple of events. He said, I'm playing in the Champions Chess Tour next week. I'm playing in the Norway Chess Tournament in Stavanger. But there is one event happening even before that, because as you said, Maria, Hikaru is a stream grinder and the grind never ends. Tomorrow, he is participating in a brand new event, Hikaru's Chess Decathlon, 10 chess events spread out through 2023, starts tomorrow. With a Chess 960 arena. Chess 960 is when the pieces are kind of scrambled on the bottom rank, not necessarily the normal starting position. Mm-hmm. There's prizes. You can participate. You can play against Hikaru. You can be crushed by Hikaru. And you can, if you are crushed, there's a chance you'll be part of a YouTube video.
Yeah, the newly crowned American Cup winner. What else would you wish for on the Monday evening? Of course, to be crushed by him. I will try to play.
And it's important to note, everyone, that if you do want to participate in this event, you need to have played 30 rated Chess 960 games previously. So now that the American Cup is finished, you're going to have more spare time, and you may want to get in a couple of training games to prepare for the tournament.
Sure.
But I think that's it from us. Do you have anything to add?
No, let's wait for Hikaru to finish the closing dinner and then do the long-awaited recap. Maybe not on the last game, although I would really love to see his insights about the move 8, Rook C1. How did he come up with that and what did he expect? Because he did actually mention in the interview to Yasser and Jovanka that had Wesley gone for another move, a round move right before the blunder, he could have won the game. So Hikaru did say briefly, but yeah, let's wait for the recap because I'm sure he will explain what he meant. But yeah, I'm looking forward to the recap. It was an amazing pleasure to commentate with you, Jon Ludwig. And as usually, chat, if I'm trolling you, it's just a joke. I love you guys. Thank you for having me here. I really enjoyed it, and I hope to be back.
Likewise, Maria. Lovely working with you. Goodbye, chat. See you next time. And congratulations, Hikaru.
When I see some of these moves that computer suggests after a game that I play, and I just go, wow, that is the beauty for me. Because these are not moves that I would ever consider. And when I then see the move, and then I might make a couple of moves to try and understand why, that is the beauty to me. I'm just trying to play as well as I can, and I don't really worry. If I lose a game, it's not the end-all be-all. I'm not naturally talented, but if I don't get something, I try to figure out why don't I get it? What am I doing wrong? Over and over and over again.
Bye.